you doing, all you beautiful sons of bitches? It's your boy Backseat here, and today we are reacting to Anthony Gramuglia's video on "Is Magneto a Villain?" An X-Men video essay. So we got my boys, we got Kilo, we got Jan, and also making his grand debut on the Backseat Boys, we got Manon McMody. Manon, say hello.
Man and McMody, but yes, thank you.
Man and McMody, pardon me. So,
That's
alright.
that's fine. It's two like different. It's username of two different like gods, so I can get like why it's
I
mixed
thought you were
between.
like I thought it was like Manon, like the water planet from KOTOR.
Manon. It's like Manon. It's like
Manon.
Manon McLear, who's
Alright.
like an old Celtic god, and then Modi, who's the god who's like Thor's son from Norse mythology. So
Alright, okay. So
yeah.
anyway, so Manon, I know you're a bit of a Marvel fan. Why don't you tell us a bit about Magneto, even though we all should know who he
Okay.
is?
So Magneto is like one of the most, I would say, like across fiction in general, is one of the most like revolutionary villains.
Yeah.
For starters, like you have the fact that like Magneto's creators Stanley and Jack Kirby were Jewish, and Magneto himself is a Holocaust survivor,
Uh-huh.
which I think alone is. And like, granted, I think it was Claremont who later retconned
That was Claremont,
Well,
yes.
Well, no.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay. Well,
I have some insights too, since I'm like a comics guy. But go ahead, Henry, or MC.
Okay, I was gonna say, like, regardless of whatever way you slice it, like, because Claremont, I'm pretty sure, was Jewish too. Like, whatever way you slice it, that's essentially like being quite aware of like Magneto is essentially a commentary on extremism and how like an ideology that can start off with an ideology that can seem noble to some can eventually lead you down to a path that can become corrupting. Like, you can find Magneto sympathetic because he's an incredibly sympathetic character.
Yes.
I mean, for God's sake, like, he's a Holocaust survivor. He's a mutant in a world that hates and wants to eradicate and kill mutants. But conversely, he's also like the opposite side. I know a lot of people make the Martin Luther King Jr. Malcolm X comparison, although again,
yeah, those aren't real. That never happened.
Stanley said multiple times that was not his intention. That was not his or Jack Kirby's intention. And I generally take the word of God on that. So take me for what you will. But regardless, like, has Magneto been portrayed as a hero or heroic in some instances? Yes, but usually that requires a long amount of reflection. He usually realizes later on in the comics what I was doing was fucked up and wasn't working. Like, I was essentially becoming the very monsters that created me. So he has become a hero in certain stories, and don't get me wrong, I like some of those stories because I do like the idea of him eventually like changing and realizing, hey, I've actually made a few mistakes, and I do like redemption arcs if they work. Like, I don't think every villain should get some, but I do think in the case of Magneto, yeah, there is a lot of interesting potential that you could do that they have done with him being redeemed.
So,
is he a villain? Yeah.
I was gonna ask, would you say his redemption arc is one of the better ones or one of the worst ones? What do you make of it?
I would say one of the better ones. My only real like complaint about it being worse is that like they flip flop too much, which just annoys me because I'm like, okay, you should stick to one. You shouldn't have to go. He's a villain 1 second and like he's redeemed 1 second and the other second he's gone back.
He's
my biggest issue is
he's like Big Show. He just flip flops.
It is. It really is like that, which is a shame because like I think the idea of him like having redeemed in and of itself is a brilliant story, and I think like a lot of my favorite comics were like the '80s run of like Avengers versus X-Men stuff like that. Like that's a lot of where I got into the Avengers and stuff, and Magneto was like a big player in that, and I like the sort of like aspect they took where he's still changing. He's not fully there, but he's starting to get on a better path. And like the moment where he reads Captain America's mind in that story and discovers that like Cap is someone who just has no prejudice whatsoever, he's like, I was wrong. Like I assumed every human ever just hates mutants, but this guy is like an exception to that, and it kind of shatters his worldview. Anyway, that's my long rant over.
All right.
Yeah. Well, while we're on the subject of Magneto, I'd like to bring up my gripes with not only him, but just mutants, or at least how they're currently ran in Marvel in general, because I would say they're the most butchered aspect in the entirety of the Marvel universe as it currently stands. Like, there's no real competition, and it has entirely to do with this obsession with having them be portrayed as purely an oppressed minority allegory when when that was never the original intent of mutants at all. Like, despite what people will say or his like rewrite, Stan Lee's original intention was to just have like an easy go-to explanation for for people having superpowers. And if there was any allegory, it would be for them to just be regular outsiders.
Yeah.
In other words, anything,
Yeah,
like any something anyone, any of the audience members can relate to, because every single one of us, like any single person in the audience, any single person on the planet has felt like an outsider in one aspect or another.
Yeah, because Stan's main inspiration for the original 5 were like the Beat generation, not like oppressed minorities or whatever. So yeah. Anyway.
Yep. Yeah. There's so in that case, you can make them civil rights allegory or civil rights inspired stories with the X-Men or mutants. However, that's not the only story. Like, there are other aspects you can go with because it's only one aspect of being an outsider. You can have stories related to being a teenager, being a social outsider. You can have stories where someone is deservedly an outsider for bad traits. Like, there are mutants that are Nazis, that are just like murderers, or just dangerous criminals, like perverts, etc. Like, they aren't just looked at as, like, mutants aren't just simply an allegory for oppressed, like for someone who's oppressed or a victim. That has never been the case at all.
I was gonna the uncomfortable thing hovering over, I feel, this video as well as everyone else who's like, oh yeah, I am all for the X-Men and the mutants being portrayed as like the minority group, is that immense level of power and the very real implications that would have on society, which I feel are going to go unmentioned in this video. But like,
absolutely.
I'm going to reference X-Men 97 briefly. There's a scene where Wolverine has to short notice take Jean Grey to a hospital because she's pregnant and about to give birth. And the framing of a scene where Wolverine threatens a doctor who informs Wolverine that they don't do mutant births at this hospital. And obviously the doctor, they make him sound very bigoted, but he like says, you guys might not have controls of your power. What if we need to do like a C-section or something? And obviously that's kind of what it's getting into, where that's how it's often framed, like, oh, look at this unreasonable person not willing to help them because they're mutants, when hang on, that's a very real concern. What about the 3 other births that are happening right at this moment, and how they might, the lives of those people might be compromised because there's a mutant here?
Yeah, that's such a good point, Jan, because like skin color and superpowers are not remotely the same thing.
No, they're not.
Or gender, or sexuality, or anything else.
The other point I want to make, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, because to be fair to the comics, like, they have actually done like plot points where it's not just mutants are like hated or whatever. Like, I think Grant Morrison, in his run, if I remember correctly, like, mutants were more kind of like fetishized at one point. Like, they were kind of like seen as like a, I don't know what the right word is. I'm trying to,
like some orange, some orange is the new black stuff. It's like they're the hip stuff now.
Yeah, it's like a hip sort of thing, which is like a sort of like new way that you can take them beyond just going back to status quo. Like, obviously, I can understand why writers go back to that, and like, you obviously want to highlight that aspect, but that's not all that they have.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and like as you were saying before, Henry, Professor X and Magneto, they weren't based off of Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. Like, obviously they can be inspired by them in other stories, but that wasn't the original intention with Claremont.
They were based off of
like,
they were Israeli guys.
Prime ministers.
Yeah.
Like, one was like a more just like in dealing with Palestinians, one was more like peaceful, and the other was more like, okay, let's bomb the hell out of them.
Yeah.
And that's essentially, you can essentially see that with the different mentalities between Professor X and Magneto. But Magneto's problem, like, in wanting a mutant society, is that it's completely unreconcilable, because okay, since we've established that pretty much anyone can be a mutant, like having just a
and we
big
won't
mutant
know until they're a
ethnostate.
teenager. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
having like a big mutant ethnostate, it does not it does not ensure like a utopia like a utopia at all, because you're still going to have differing ideologies, you're going to have like differing ideas, etc. Like who's to say that there won't that mutants based on their different type of powers will group up? Like you're telling me that the task won't say, oh yeah, like we're so much better than everyone else, let's just form our own group.
Yeah.
Like you have the
I think
Hellfire Club,
it's
for
even
instance.
simpler. I was gonna say it's even simpler. They are still people from Earth with nations. Who's to say that someone like that a mutant from America might not get along with a mutant from Russia simply on the premise that like their
Well,
parents might have
Mhm.
had taught them different cultural values.
Exactly.
also, I think I think it was either Jack or it was either Jack or Backseat kind of said this earlier. Like, not every mutant in the Marvel universe is sort of like is a good person. For instance, there's
Yes.
Sabretooth and Omega Red, who I know
Yeah.
examples.
So I was
Yeah.
gonna say
Like
Sabretooth
Omega
is the
Red in
easiest one.
particular, I didn't realize until like I reread a lot of stuff that Omega Red is actually is implied in universe to be a rapist and potential pedophile. I was like, Jesus Christ! Like,
Yeah, and
like-
again, like you have other villains like Mr. Sinister, like Fenrir, like
Apocalypse.
those two twins that are just Nazis, like Nazi scientists.
Well, I was gonna say
And
let's go even. Sorry to interrupt you. I was gonna say let's go even to the X-Men themselves. Wolverine is he's a good guy at heart, but
But
he is a
he's
very
not the
violent
best
person.
guy, no.
Yeah,
by his own
it
admission, he
depends
is a
on what
very
he
violent
it
person.
depends on what he does, but what he does isn't very nice.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and another thing, not every mutant power is inherently a gift.
Yeah.
That's another thing that needs to be
Beak is a good example of
Yeah.
that.
Uh, Rogue is very different from Storm. Like
Yeah.
Storm is someone who gets worshipped as a goddess. Like she has, like she has overpowered abilities that makes people love her.
Mm-hmm.
Rogue though cannot touch anybody. Like
Mm-hmm.
she has she's overpowered, but she can't live like as a normal person. So to say that, hey, oh, it's unreasonable for someone to want a cure for being mutant, like because it's denying who you are, like that's an absurd premise already, because
Also, like,
it's so different. It's so dependent on the circumstances. It's a different, like what powers you get.
Yeah.
Well, think about Beak, for instance, like because that character is literally just a human with a beak who looks like a bird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
He doesn't even really have like proper powers. Like the best he has is like
he's just a
faster
bird
digestion.
man.
Yeah, like just some like things, but not enough to be like not enough to like physically be any kind of danger for anyone.
Hmm.
Now Beak's a cool
Anyway.
character, don't get me wrong, but like
Yeah.
the idea that like
Anthony.
the idea that Beak is gonna take on the Marvel universe is like just one of the most preposterous things you could ever say.
Right. But for anyone to say, sorry, go ahead, Jan.
No, nothing. I was gonna say I'm sure that Mr. Anthony will get into all of it. That's fine.
Yeah, but
he will.
He's going to get into like why Magneto is right, but it's so absurd because any justification I see of people saying that Magneto is right is just ignoring like obvious elephants in the room. The most obvious one being that yes, it is reasonable to hold certain mutants to different standards from everyone else because their powers like affect everyone else living around them. Like yes, there should be laws against like using your telepathy in like in illicit ways, using power, like ensuring that there are precautions set for people who cannot control their powers, or else people will be killed. Yeah, but let's actually start the video and see what his arguments are.
Right.
I'm curious now.
God. Here we go.
Stan Lee and Jack Kirby have just created the X-Men and need a villain for them to fight. They create Magneto, the master of magnetism, a mutant fanatic who wants to harm humans and take over the world. In many ways, he bears much in common with Doctor Doom, another villain they recently created to fight the Fantastic Four, another superhero team.
Dr. Doom was 2 years
Ironic.
earlier.
That doesn't
Well, he said that they bear a lot in common. I don't even know that I agree. Wasn't Doctor
The,
Doom's
the
whole
only sort
shtick-
of like similarity I guess you can argue is that like they have is
well,
that depending on the writer they have sympathetic motivations, but that's about it. Because like in some
wasn't Doom's
versions,
whole
at least in the version.
Sorry, I was just gonna say Doom's whole shtick is like very personal with Reed, right? Like,
Yes.
Well, yeah, but in some versions, like writers say, in some versions which I kind of prefer, writers say like he does want to take over the world, but it's more for like what he
Pragmatic
perceives as the greater good.
reasons.
Like, yeah, which I kind of prefer as opposed to like being cartoonishly evil. But that's just me. I know there's like different takes on that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I
But-
don't
but-
even just go ahead.
Well, the most consistent aspect with Doctor Doom is that his origin is because he was a college, he was a fellow college student with Reed, and during an experiment, like he was too arrogant, and that caused his face to be, permanently scarred. But then he had delusions of grandeur, where he conquered Latveria and then wants to go on and conquer the whole world. But his obsession with Reed, makes him prioritize like ruining his life for anything else, and that's just been his major character flaw.
Yeah, I was gonna say about the machine incident, like the writers, like I think it was John Byrne who later retconned that, went back and said what he was actually trying to do was like basically send himself to hell to get his mother's soul because she was trapped there because she was a witch, basically.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Cynthia
writers have kind of gone back.
Yeah, Mephisto has her soul.
Yeah, which was like one of the, which if I'm honest, like that whole thing with the Doctor Strange stuff, that was amazing, to be fair.
Yeah.
Miss when Marvel was good.
Sorry, 1 second. My girlfriend texted me. I just had to reply quick. Yeah, no.
I'll just get back onto the video.
Yep.
No.
Yeah. Let's be cringe.
They were hoping. And Magneto seems like a disappointment. It is 2024, and Magneto is commonly regarded as one of the greatest comic book villains in creation.
True.
He is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But the reasons people call him the greatest villain is where we take issue.
Yeah.
He sees the writing on the wall, indicating that history will repeat itself. To avoid this end, he fights against humanity, sometimes for the survival of his race, and sometimes for dominion.
They used reason while others used tanks, and they were destroyed for their trouble. I won't stand by and watch it happen again.
Given the many, many horrible human villains the X-Men face, the X-Men being one of the most popular superhero teams, by the way, even more so than Fantastic Four, many hesitate to even call him a villain, both inside the comics and outside.
He is a villain.
No mistake.
He is a villain. I can't really disagree with the people hesitate because sadly you have too many brain dead morons, but yeah, he is a villain.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not that Magneto hasn't done villainous stuff. He clearly has.
I'm gonna make a prediction.
Oh, you acknowledge he's done bad things.
You don't say.
I'm gonna make a bold prediction here. The argumentation process is going to be yes, Magneto has hurt humans, but conversely, humans sometimes some humans don't like mutants, and Magneto is mutant. So
well, then by that point, it's just eye for an eye.
He doesn't just hurt humans. He's ripped the things he's done to other mutants.
He's ripped
hurt other mutants. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I don't know if this is ever touched on a comic book.
Technically killed. Until that was retconned, he technically killed Jean Grey at one point. Until Marvel went back and said that's not him.
Wolverine and the adamantium removing from Wolverine, right? Because that's like a
Fatal
famous thing that he
did.
It's a case of I would really like to have him to have a conversation with Logan about the fact that Logan fought in World War II.
Yeah.
Which I just don't know that that's ever been addressed.
Where were you when I was growing up? I was in Japan.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Writers have told stories featuring this character, and many write him in a manner that's contradictory. Grant Morrison famously wrote Magneto disguised as Zorn, a mutant hiding away at the Xavier School. As Zorn, Magneto manages to break Xavier's spine after previously healing it, before enslaving New York City and threatening to reverse the planet's.
Hold on, can we stop there? Because that's actually a point against his argument. Like,
Yeah.
he healed his best friend. He healed his best friend. I want to clarify, Charles isn't just like some random schmuck. Charles is his best friend. Every version of like the X-Men, whether it's comics, movies, TV show, video game, makes clear that they are essentially brothers for all their differences. So he heals his back and then breaks it again. How in the hell can you say, "Oh no, that was justified"?
I just want to say we're 2 minutes in. I'm still waiting for him to like make a point because all he's saying is like describing Magneto at this point.
Yeah.
Like, he just said that everyone.
He
when
just
his
mentions
point was
one
that
of the biggest dick moves Magneto did.
when his point was that everyone knows Magneto, so like it's you need why do we need to do all this groundwork?
He's yapping. He's just yapping.
Zorn manages to fatally injure Jean Grey, and it's ultimately Wolverine who kills him. Morrison intended Zorn to be Magneto from the beginning, dropping clues to the nature of his true identity. In an interview with Pop Image, Morrison said, "What people often forget, of course, is that Magneto, unlike the lovely Sir Ian McKellen, is a mad old terrorist twat.
True.
No matter how he justifies his stupid, brutal behavior, or how anyone else tries to justify it, in the end, he's just an old bastard with daft old ideas based on violence and coercion."
I agree.
He really wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm offended by your accusation.
However, after they finish their run on New X-Men, Morrison's entire...
Yeah, I was gonna say that feels like a pretty accurate read to me on who Magneto is in a lot of cases. Absent, obviously, character growth. At least the starting point is always that.
Yep.
Yeah, because as we've previously discussed, like Magneto's worldview is completely just irreconcilable with it's self-defeating because like mutants do not have one shared ideology. There's still going to be conflict even if he gets rid of all the humans. This is what makes the X-Men more noble by comparison because they recognize. Go ahead.
It's also.
I was gonna say getting rid of humans in general is just like you can't justify that in any way because that is just evil and genocide by definition.
Well, one might even say that he took the wrong lessons away from his experiences in World War, during World War II. That's kind of the point. You can walk away from horrific things with an outlook that allows you to see them for the horrible things that they are and strive for better, or you can wallow in it. He chooses to wallow in it. That's kind of the very brief point of his character. Obviously, there's more to him, right, based on storyline. But the description there is pretty spot on. He thinks because he suffered, it gives him license to enact suffering on others for the greater good.
Exactly.
That's pretty classic.
The entire plot was tossed out the window. Chris Claremont was quick to retcon Morrison's Zorn storyline, revealing that Zorn was just a mutant who had convinced himself he was Magneto, while the real Magneto was resting in Genosha. Stunned anyone could ever believe he'd do anything as evil as what Zorn was doing.
Oh, it's not so surprising, really. Mankind has always feared what it doesn't understand.
Writers for decades have wrestled with Magneto's morality. Is he a freedom fighter or a tyrant in the making? Both sides of this debate have ample evidence, since again, so many writers have had different interpretations of the Master of Magnetism. And ultimately, the question becomes which version of the character resonates with you most? The freedom fighter or the monster?
I will bring you home, old friend, and I ask only one thing in return. Don't get in my way.
Either side of the argument has plenty of issues they can cite. That's not interesting to me. I'm more interested in looking at why people have, over the years, shifted their interpretation of Magneto.
Because he's shifted as a character?
Because writers are largely inconsistent and don't share the same beliefs with other writers.
And also, like, writers can have different takes in a good way. Like, they can be writers can take over books sometimes and have an interesting idea for a character that could actually work. Well, not saying it's always the case.
the he's a freedom fighter or a monster. It's like what's the saying? Like one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Right? That's like
Yes.
it's a
That's a
classic.
good point
Like
too.
it could just all be a matter of perspective from the audience. Yeah, I mean, I suppose we'll have to let his research speak for itself. As a premise for a video, it's not bad. It's just regrettable that we had to take 4 minutes to get to it. But
Yeah.
Oh, fucking hell!
Rallying
This is
for
37
crime for
minutes.
breaking the status quo. And yet,
I'm
sure,
so
when Ian
sorry.
McKellen played Magneto, people had
No, that's
already
fine.
begun to see him as an anti-villain. But in 2024, people will outright say, Magneto is right. Magneto did nothing wrong.
It's
That
an
is
absolute
demonstrably false.
Okay. Wait. Georgie, just to be clear, people will say that about a certain other person from a similar sort of time frame that I can think of. So
Nah,
that
you
doesn't
guys.
really vindicate
Nah,
him.
nah, Jan, you don't understand. Magneto did nothing wrong.
Guys on the internet will say did nothing wrong about anyone. Senator Armstrong, I will say Senator Armstrong did nothing wrong. All right, that doesn't make that true.
No, different. Senator Armstrong was base.
The Joker
Senator
did nothing
Armstrong.
wrong.
John Cliff, he didn't do anything wrong.
Joker just beats Jason Todd to death again.
Didn't do nothing
Also,
wrong.
I'm pretty sure.
I did nothing wrong.
By the way, I'm like pretty sure that if you went back in time, like you could find people making a similar sort of argument that could be just boiled down to Magneto did nothing wrong at any point because the subject matter is just so inherently contentious. So,
Yes.
People have said he did nothing wrong.
Genghis Khan did nothing wrong.
Nobody did anything wrong.
All the random stuff, bro. That was nothing wrong there.
Now, before we begin, if you like what I do, take the time to like and subscribe.
No, don't. If you're watching this video,
No,
don't.
don't.
No.
No. If you have any brain cells, don't.
In the background or underlaying a plot.
Audiences are used to villains who want to upturn the status quo, but over the last few decades, there's been a shift in how we watch these villains. Richard III, one of the classic Shakespearean bad guys, wants to be king, to upturn the entire hierarchy so he can rule.
And therefore, since I cannot prove a lover, I'm determined to prove a villain.
Why he wants to rule doesn't really matter. He wants to be on top, and will carve his way up there to get it. But we don't question that. We just accept that they want to rule, and that's bad.
But wait a fucking second. Why Richard III wants to rule is the central fucking issue of the entire story.
No.
The reason Richard III wants to rule is so that he can assert himself over the others because society has scorned him because of his twisted back. He wants him becoming king is not his objective in and of itself. His objective is to get revenge on the people that he perceives having spurned him, and becoming king is the best way to do so. That is the point.
You don't understand. Richard III did nothing wrong.
Also, it's like a case of what he would need to. I don't even disagree that there are villains that you can cite that like they just want power for its own sake, but Richard III is absolutely not one of those villains. This is a miss.
No,
it's not.
What you're looking for, like. It's the entire speech that he just showed there of the the winter of our discontent speech. Like he outlines there very clearly. Everyone hates me. Nobody will even spare me a second look. And because I cannot be a hero, I will be a villain, and I will I will get mine that way.
Yeah.
What is that but outlining an objective, a motivation that is a core central element of his character?
Yeah.
Go home.
Go home, Ant, please.
The hero comes back, saves the day, order is restored, and the rightful king takes his place. The status quo is fixed.
Yes.
Audiences tend to see the pursuit of power for power's sake as motivation enough for a bad guy, provided he's entertaining enough. However...
well, no, again, I'd say the reason we see that as enough is because people can understand that, like, power allows you to do things, and whatever that person's objective may be, like it doesn't really matter because the pursuit of power is coherent enough in and of itself. But okay, like again, to be clear, I agree. There's villains that just want power and we don't learn more about them. But it's just like it's about power in and of itself as a concept that is immediately, as humans, we just understand, yeah, this is something people want, so we don't question it. Whereas when you get to the villains that don't just want power, that's probably where you want to do more legwork because you want to establish a sort of motivation that might be less, like, more complicated for people to understand.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Right.
Over the last century, we've been seeing storytellers explore the question, why, more and more.
Why do you ask questions to which you already know the answers?
Nowhere is this more true than with comic book villains, who often were created to hit a deadline before building over time into mythic figures of storytelling.
And I said, we'll make them mutants, and we'll call the book The Mutants. And he said, no, Stan, that's no good, because our readers wouldn't know what a mutant is.
I have no doubt.
Kind of funny.
How hilarious in hindsight.
Yeah.
He was right. They're right. They don't know.
Lee, the prophet. Truly.
Yeah.
Personally, that Stan Lee made Magneto just to serve as that issue's bad guy.
The brave are always the first to die.
Chris Claremont is honestly the real reason why Magneto, as a character, has become such an icon.
True.
Okay,
yeah, I agree with that.
I suppose between my vision of him and Marvel's is I don't see him as a villain. I see him as an adversary.
Ultimately, Magneto was a bad guy because he wanted to upturn systems of control. The problem is, since 1962, it's become ever clearer how awful these systems of control
The fuck
are.
is this?
Your kind of
Oh.
Oh my god.
Here we go.
Here we go, boys.
Cringe.
I don't even. It's a case of I don't even know that. Going back to they want to villains just want to uproot the status quo. What about like heroes that just want to uproot the status quo?
Yeah,
like,
the X-Men
there's
want to
heroes that
change
are
the status
proactive.
quo. They don't want mutants to be
Batman
hated.
does.
Sorry, what?
Like the amount of heroes you could list who want to change the status quo. Like if you want to go even further back, like technically, if you want to go even further back, like some of the earliest literary heroes were attempts to change the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Robin Hood, for instance, is a good example. King Arthur, kind of to some degree.
I was gonna go with Theseus. I mean, he goes out of his way. He goes out of his way to subvert what's the status quo and fuck, where was it that the Minotaurs? I forget, but you know what I mean.
That's another good example.
Achilles is literally trying to help conquer a kingdom that is, also subverting the status quo. Now, you could argue in those stories there is typically yes, there is an antagonist that incites, the protagonist going on a journey, but it's like I think to dilute villains to that again is a bit, it's a bit like myopic.
What about villains who want to enforce the status quo? What about that?
Well, even in comics, even in comics, there are loads of heroes who I can think of, having read like several comic books, who I can think of who you could say are examples of like wanting to change the status quo.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Outside of the X-Men, like Batman is a good example because attempting to change like a corrupt city into somewhere that people will want to live in and somewhere that's relatively crime free.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Stark, Iron Man, to someone who wants to like essentially kind of like fix the mistakes that he's allowed and correct a system that he had a massive involvement in. Like there's so many examples, and like Backseat said, the X-Men are literally changing the status quo.
Well, I mean, I was gonna say in whatchamacallit, in 1984, O'Brien, he just wants to enforce the status quo, right? Like literally, he just wants to brainwash people for Ingsoc.
Who's O'Brien?
He's the guy who tortures Winston.
In what?
From 1984, George
Orwell.
I
thought you meant the year 1984. Okay, anyway, go on.
No, you're good.
All right.
No.
A figure who's
but one more thing I should add.
Unjust system.
Civilians are reacting.
So did you want to say something, Jack?
It's interesting how like Ant seems to have this perspective. Oh, like Magneto like wasn't good before because he was super one dimensional, but he somehow thinks that just like a system or people being fearful of mutants is solely because of bigotry. That's that's not bad, even though it's one dimensional.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
he selectively wants nuance in certain cases, but doesn't want any nuance in other cases.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's an unfortunate nature, like truth about. I don't want to know if I want to hold this one in my back pocket, but like the topic of bigotry. Just so we're clear, everyone agrees that it's okay to be bigoted against certain people.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
that's,
For instance, like the entire concept of love is based in discrimination. Like we're consciously choosing to prefer one person or specific people over other people.
I was gonna say even, but like fundamentally, like I guess Anthony would probably challenge the notion that you could even be, but like functionally, in terms of language, that's just how the cookie crumbles, right? If you hear someone is a Nazi, right? Like if someone just walks up to you and says, "Hey, I support the Nazi Party," right? It's like a case of, okay, well, you're probably gonna not want to hang out with that person, even though they could, actually not be doing anything pro-Nazi. They just think that, they're down with Nazism, but they help out at the soup kitchen or something like that. Like humans are complicated, and typically it's like, yes, you don't want to be, what they try to dilute it down to is, yeah, but it's like inherent characteristic that they didn't choose. But it's like, well, even then, right? Like, how much agency do we have over who we become is inherently always in question with the nature versus nurture thing, right? Like, if someone grew up in a community where everyone's a Klansman, like, did they really choose to be a Klansman? Like, and how much agency can we expect from a person? It gets really fucking messy, and nobody wants to be having these conversations.
Yeah,
because it
and that's a
involves...
very good. Yeah, and that's a very good point, Jam. Because again, you can be a Nazi and still be a mutant. Like, yeah, and
exactly.
according to Ant, if you're fearful of a Nazi mutant, then you can't. then
well, you have to
then
be. Well, you have to be fearful of the Nazi part. Yeah, you have to be fearful of the Nazi part, not the bigot, not the mutant part.
You're
And
double
then you're
bigoted.
golden.
Yeah.
My point is, it's more complicated than what's being in a lot of cases presented. But I don't know. Maybe Ant doesn't think that. We'll see. I'm just saying.
Oh God.
Just to be clear, we all agree. Every person, whether they admit to it or not, is pro bigotry.
Yes.
To a news broadcast dealing with mutants as villains, hostile enemies, whereas there's another character who holds the opposite point of view. It's a series of ongoing moral and reality choices, which for me is what Magneto exemplifies throughout the entire series.
And this isn't just Magneto. This is across the board. Take Poison Ivy, a character who primarily...
She's not gonna fucking...
No.
She's an eco-terrorist. She's not.
Yes.
She's an eco-terrorist. She's trying to kill humans.
Yes.
From those horrible bulldozers.
Perhaps in the
Okay, can we
50s,
pause just for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Usually, most of the poison... You know what? I'll give Anthony this. He's the first person trying to defend Poison Ivy who's not his simp.
Yes.
Okay, I'll give him that. That low bar is like... So I'm disappointed that we have to go to that, but like I'll acknowledge that. That being said, Poison Ivy is so not in the right because there's another DC character who has similar powers who doesn't try to wipe out humanity, called fucking Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
I just...
Society saw these concepts as radical. But it's 2024. Fourth wave feminism and environmental protection are more mainstream than ever. Poison Ivy's desperate push...
Dog, what?
Thankfully, I just to be clear, like, listen, man, I get it. Yes, it's true. People are more conscious of environmental issues now than they were probably 50 years ago. But I would hope that outside of the echo chamber that is Twitter, the opinion on whether or not it's okay to literally kill all humans has not really shifted too significantly.
No.
Yeah, I like to think that there was more thought put into Poison Ivy than simply her being a representation of people being afraid of women and like hippies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, but
like we gotta kill all the people so the plants can live, man.
Hippies
be
are
fair,
fucking weird.
then again, I remember like you remember when Black Panther came out and everyone was like simping over how like a
Killmonger.
complex, yeah, well, like complex
Killmonger,
villain
yeah.
Killmonger is. I had a hobby at the time, which was literally to just on like any social media platform I could send them the scene where Killmonger says they're gonna kill all the children. And it's like I don't know that I'm just saying. I don't feel he's that complicated,
Yeah.
guys. I think he just wants to kill kids.
Yeah.
Now you don't understand how motivated, how complex this
Yeah.
child killer is.
Yeah, it's giant killer's complex.
They're colonizers in training.
We're seeing women
True.
suffer
Colonizers in training.
at the hands of sexism.
Oh. Okay. Oh my fucking god.
Critics tried to justify Poison Ivy's place as a villain
No,
for years.
can we stop for a second? 'Cause I just
Her place.
Justifies if there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah, I was gonna say just very quickly. Her place as a villain is justified by the fact that she wants to fucking kill everyone.
Yes.
She wants to wipe out humans.
She wants to cover the earth in plants, and that is legit
And
what she
kill
wants.
every human.
Yes, that's
And
not
wants every human
that's not something in
dead.
Uma Thurman's portrayal. That's literally what Ivy wants.
Yeah, like
Every
this is like a pretty crucial misunderstanding of like I guess villainy on some level.
Yes.
So I recently replayed an excellent video game called Spec Ops: The Line. I don't know if anyone here has played it, but there's a particular quote at the end. Yeah, there's a particular quote at the end where Conrad, when he has having his, in Walker's head conversation with Walker, Walker says, "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," and Conrad's answer to that is, "No one ever does." That's the point. Once you cross the Rubicon on you doing on your I don't want to hurt anyone, but I want to do good, to the point where you're killing so many fucking people or doing so much harm, that's when you become a villain. It can be both. It could be you could be a villain because you're just doing stuff that is objectively, socially unacceptable.
I'm
like
trying to
killing
save people, he says as bodies are all around him.
Yeah. No, exactly. And it's like a case of Poison Ivy's like, I just want to have plans and people to say be more respectful towards women and have more plans on the earth. It's like, oh no, that's fine, we can work on that. But then the issue is when we say we can work on that, it's probably going to take a little while to get some of these things worked out. But we can work on it. It's just not good enough. We need to kill everyone.
Yes.
That's
You know
what
what,
makes her a
guys?
villain.
You know what, guys? I think we were too harsh to Superboy Prime. He
Uh,
wasn't really that evil after all.
He did
Yeah.
nothing wrong.
Yeah,
also did nothing wrong.
he just punched, what was his name, like Risk or whatever the hell. He just punched clean through his chest, beat Mr. Miggsy Spitlick to a pulp, fucking
Killed,
killed
Killed Puma,
didn't he
killed Wildebeest,
yep, killed them. Didn't he kill didn't he
killed
kill
Connor.
Yeah, he killed Connor.
He killed Connor.
Damn near. Didn't he kill Bart? Didn't he kill Bart?
Well,
Nah, but
ultimately,
you see, he just wanted to bring his home back. He was totally justified with that.
What we're getting at here is we generally it depends, right? Like I don't know what ethical system Ant subscribes to, but under most ethical systems or like most forms of deontology, which is like what most people work with, we attribute like virtue or like moral culpability to both the methods and like the goals, right? So like you can have a noble goal but go about it in a way that is
bad,
would still fail you on like the grand moral calculus.
And outcome are both relevant, basically.
Yeah, because it's like a case of, let's just say I have like a garden, right? And I say, damn it, I just don't like people showing up in my garden. What I could do is put up a sign. What I could also do is put up an M1 Abrams and shoot every person that crosses the threshold.
You just get you just start spraying people down.
These are both, and then and confront how can you be so evil? I say, what do you mean? I just want some alone time.
Yeah.
Is that so bad? Is it bad to just want to be alone every now and again to ruminate?
You know what? I guess next time someone comes knocking my door,
and then he says, "Okay, yeah, but like, no, we gotta kill him. We gotta kill all the people that walk into my garden because otherwise I can't be alone." It's like the answer to Poison Ivy, which is what Batman often says, is like, no, we can do what you want, but you just can't do it this way. That's not acceptable. Yeah. Anyway.
During the 90s, it was clear audiences just weren't buying her as a villain all that much. Their values
Really?
aligned too much.
Even in the 90s, we knew she was evil, you dumbass.
Okay,
Yes.
it's funny how he uses that one episode with Harley and not the episode where she is replacing like rich people like by
with their plant clones.
inventing they're like plant monsters
Yeah.
to emotionally manipulate them to ultimately steal from them.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty that's pretty evil, don't you think?
Yeah,
A lot of people would
bruh, she tried to feed Batman to a vagina plant, for God's sake.
She's trying to feed him to like multiple plants.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a case of like,
dude,
what he just said.
Ivy and Batman and Robin, the movie is actually pretty evil if you look at what she does. She's probably the most evil Ivy has ever been depicted.
I can see that argument.
I mean, just notice again his.
When she tried to kill
that.
She tried to kill Mr. Freeze's wife, for God's sakes. But anyway,
True.
go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say it's interesting to me how again he highlights the reason we can't view like in his estimation, because I was saying is like why people view these villains as not villains anymore, or like less prone to it's like because their values align too closely with her. It's like a case of, well, I mean, perhaps you could say that, but the issue shouldn't just be your values, it should also be the manner in which your values are expressed. And I don't believe that this is true, again, outside of certain spaces online where people like to...
How you doing, all you
even actually, I would go so far as to say that the people who profess they agree with Poison Ivy or they agree with Magneto, if Poison Ivy or Magneto were a real person, they would not actually agree with them.
No.
Like it's a matter. It's like a matter of if we simply reframed Magneto and Poison Ivy to be someone different. Like let's say that instead of being a mutant like a superpowered mutant leader person, Magneto was like a big, massive billionaire, right? Like you would already inherently get people that get off that boat immediately.
Yeah.
So like the thing is, what people say about like how closely they align to their values. People find it interesting that the villains have relatable values, sure, but most people don't still think that it's okay to go about it in the manner that they're going about it. That's and if they are, we have horrifically gone off course as a society.
Yeah, just because a villain has like relatable values or whatever, has aspects that you could be like whatever, that doesn't give them a free hook. Like for instance, I doubt Catholics or Christians are going to start going, oh no, Bane believes in Christianity or Catholicism,
exactly.
whichever one it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm Catholic and I'm like, no, Bane's fucking evil. Like, sorry, they like he might have good traits, but he's still a bad guy. But he's still evil at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he believes in God. He believes in God. Cartels are based, actually.
I hear the fact that he has slaughtered a family of 4, but conversely, he prayed to Jesus after, so
so it's all good, bro.
Yeah.
Dude.
He did a couple Hail Marys. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, no, he gets a pass.
Consider Batman and Robin, where Uma Thurman plays Poison Ivy. Now,
why would we look at Batman and Robin? It's not a good movie.
No.
Like the characterization here is likely going to be askew.
Yes.
I will say this. I think it gets too much hate, personally speaking. I don't think it's good.
No. To be clear, Batman and Robin is the ultimate 10 out of 10 amazing epic dank movie I have ever seen, but it is not well made.
No.
It's not well made. I just think it gets too much hate.
Jan,
I just think like
I never leave home without it.
Batman.
Jan,
I never
counterpoint.
leave home without it. Well, like people who are like, it's the worst Batman film ever. I'm like, have you seen BVS? Like BVS is objectively worse in every way.
BVS is actually worse written than Batman and Robin, actually.
Oh my God, you're right.
See, at least with Batman and Robin, he doesn't kill.
No,
it's true.
True.
Really tried to sell her as unambiguously evil.
7 million. Never leave the cave without it.
But how does her motivation to protect nature factor into any?
No, he's not. Hold on, he's not gonna say. Oh, the fact that they tried to sell her as like pure evil is what makes the film suck.
To freeze the planet. I don't think ice is conductive for plant growth.
Yeah, that's why the plot's stupid.
I'm not a botanist here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a stupid detail. I'll give him that.
That was it for Poison Ivy as a villain.
You'd think after living with Mr. J, I'd be used to a little pain.
Why do you put up with that clown?
Ivy becomes a positive influence for Harley. Her
Not really.
Not really, no.
No.
a positive.
They don't like each other. They don't really like each other.
Hold on, did he just say be gay, do crime? Oh
Yeah,
my.
he did.
Oh,
He did.
fuck
No, he
you,
didn't.
Ant.
He just contradicted himself. He's contradicted
Well,
himself. How is she a positive influence if she's encouraging his negative her negative behavior?
It's more fundamental though here. It's like the use of like language and like how like storytelling works. So suppose that everything he just said was true. That in a particular interpretation of Poison Ivy, she is actually just like a positive rehabilitation person for Harley Quinn, and their relationship helps them, whatever else it may be, helps them like move forward, right, in some kind of capacity. It could be romantic, it could be platonic, whatever, and it helps Harley grow as a person. At that point, we would once again be in the mode of, yeah, what she's doing is good, and the way she's going about it, just talking to her, provided she's not like killing massive amounts of people, is fine. If alternatively, she goes about it by saying, "Oh, it's sad that Joker, was abusive to you. Let's go kill all men," that would be bad.
Yeah.
Like, it's a case of these are not. Again, it's not mutually exclusive. And again, like what Henry said at the start is absolutely correct. Like these are characters in a comic book that has millions of different way that their media and their stories are
Different
distributed with different
interpretations.
writers. Someone's
Yeah.
interpretation of Poison Ivy could be more innocuous, and it could just be someone who's like a well-intentioned extremist. It could also be someone who is like just, a psychopathic killer that's just, driven mad by whatever altered her. It could be anything.
Also, another thing to mention, I feel, is that like, going with Jan's example, like, okay, so even if we wanted to acknowledge that she's good in one interpretation, is that you have to ask, is that consistent across the board with Ivy? And we all know what the answer is.
No.
Mm-hmm.
No,
yeah,
she's.
Go.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So I was gonna say, like, even No Man's Land, which I think like is one of the few stories that does like a positive portrayal without like trying to be edgy.
Mm-hmm.
Even in that, she's still evil. Like she has like heroic traits or noble traits per se, but she's still like, you can't say she's not a villain. Like you'd be leaping through some pretty big hoops, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you were gonna say I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. Well, I was gonna say is it's a case of, this is where it gets again complicated with something like comic books or even like mythology, right? Like in general, like Greek gods are a good example of this, where in some stories Zeus will be like he'll be a paragon. In other stories, he will be a person who sexually assaulted a woman and then beget a child by her, and then leaves out for a carton of milk and never comes back. It's one of those, like, these characters are going to have a lot of different interpretations of them. There is no one definitive interpretation. The closest you could get is like, what is the most common depiction of them, and in that, Ivy is absolutely still a villain.
Mm-hmm.
But we can still accept that, yeah, she has some stories or some moments where she's less villainous, which that's fine. But he's like suggesting that after she helped Harley Quinn with her trauma, she stopped being a villain in like the public perception. Where I think that to some people, again, she would not have been a villain since day one, purely based off the environmentalism. I very much doubt that like the Unabomber ever saw her as a villain. Like, odd thing.
Unabomber.
True.
No, but like even going with that like example, sorry, even going with what you said, like of the consistency thing, like other, I was gonna make a joke where it's like, funny he should try to use the animated series, even if we wanted to agree with the animated series. Like putting aside the comics, one of the big things I grew up with as a kid, like in terms of like gaming and stuff, was the Wii, and one of the first games I got on it was Lego Batman, which, spoiler alert, features her as a fucking boss.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, not really heroic in that regard.
Yeah, like
Me,
Anyway.
and I care about you so much that I spent my entire Saturday setting up something this fucking stupid.
That's true.
Previously,
Watch your
Ivy was
fucking
primarily
Also, I
dedicated to
hate
revenge.
Poison Ivy's
Now,
character Harley in the Harley Quinn show. That
I,
this
I
is a
liked her.
completely
I liked her.
this is a completely different character than what
I
I
liked
hate the
her
Harley
until
Quinn
she
show
walked
full
out
stop.
on. I liked her until she walked out on Kite Man. All right, that cannot be forgiven. Kite Man was
Nah.
the goat.
Kite Man was the goat. I hate the Harley Quinn show full stop. Like
I
it's just
like
fucking
aspects of it, but I would
I like
say I
some
enjoy
aspects.
watching it. I would say I enjoy watching it. I don't think it's good, is what I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. My entire stance on the Harley Quinn show is my entire stance on Harley Quinn as a character as she's written right now, in that she does. People don't know what they're doing with her. Like
Yeah.
she was conceived to be Joker's girlfriend, and when they realize, she gets abused in this relationship, they try to make her something else, and they try to make her into a hero for some reason when people loved her for being a villain. Like, and
Well,
it's just so confused. Like,
well, I mean, I feel that the obvious answer is going to be necessarily that you know, so the outlook that we have in general, like society-wise, is going to obviously shift over time because obviously outlooks change, and the outlook, which is kind of kind of what he's trying to say is like, oh, the outlook has changed, and therefore Poison Ivy is viewed as not a villain, where the case is no, she is still ought to still be viewed as a villain because of her methodology. If she is not, that's a different conversation. That would be a problem. But like most people still understand that Poison Ivy is the bad guy, and I think to suggest that most people don't think of Poison Ivy as the villain is to be pretty out of touch.
Yeah.
Because, like,
yeah.
Ive, you came to save me! Look, I always do. My entire existence seems to be spent cleaning up your fucking messes.
it's hard to
Yeah,
vilify
great
someone
voice
who wants
acting.
to help someone out. It's just not easy. Magneto, on the other hand, wants
no, it's What did he say? Sorry, let me just play him back real quick.
someone who wants to help someone out. It's just not easy.
I'm sorry. Can anyone think of any single Can anyone think of any example of like just fucking like anyone think of any example of a character who just wanted to help someone and it went horrifically to shit? There's so many fucking examples in media.
I have a good one. Have you guys
Megatron? Yeah, there you go.
Megatron TF1. That's a good one. Have you guys seen? I forgot what it's called, but it was like Super Criminals or something like that. It was like it was a Netflix thing because Mark Millar had his own like universe.
Yeah.
It wasn't Jupiter's Legacy. It was the other show.
Super Crooks.
Super Crooks. Yeah. It kind of that in that like the main character in it is like
I know what you're talking about. Oh
yeah,
Henry, I know what you're talking about. So in the first episode,
yes,
he tries LARPing. He has electric powers, and he tries LARPing as a superhero. And he tries saving the day, but in the process, he electrocutes a pool full of people.
Yeah, and kills all of them.
I was gonna say just like also Superman, Man of Steel, right? Like he destroys an entire fucking city. It's again, Spectre of the Line, Walker. You could go to the original.
Spider fans still say he was saving the day, but sure.
Yeah, true. Well, I mean, that's the thing. That's just the thing. It's more complicated. You can be saving the day, but going about it in a horrific way. Like, Strange in Infinity War and Endgame. If he just knocked out Quill, well, the game's done, right? Like, we don't need any more. We don't need to go further. This is the thing. Like, very few, if any, people or characters, therefore, because they're inspired on obviously like how humans behave, ever think that they are the bad guys in like their own story. They always feel they are helping someone in some way, shape, or form. Because we as humans are prone to like our brain doesn't like to reconcile like for normal people, like functioning people, right? Our brains don't like wrestling the idea that we are a bad person, so they will rationalize and try to explain to itself that no, what I'm doing is good. Like Better Call Saul is a good example of this, like a more contemporary example maybe, and one that's actually well written. Jimmy McGill, his entire story is him thinking that, yeah, I'm doing a lot of bad stuff, but I'm going to be able to do the good eventually once I have the money, right? And along the way, that's how he loses sight of the man he needs to be, because he keeps taking shortcuts and eventually ends up a Saul. Also, obviously, the other people in his life, support his bad habits in a lot of ways. But like, that's an example of a character who, in the end, did want to help, or like did want to do good, but kept taking shortcuts until eventually he crossed past the point.
Yeah, Jane, you bring up a good point. Like, being good is actually a very complicated concept when you think about it. It's not tricky to be good in very simple situations, but like certain problems start emerging when you try to be really, really good. Like every moral theory has significant problems that arise when taken to its logical extremes, and most of the world's problems can't simply be solved by brute strength. And that's how like most of these villains try to resolve these complicated issues, and that's simply not how you go about it.
Yeah, and it's again to suggest that it's hard to view someone as like a villain or a bad person when they're just trying to help someone that's a very weird
And
outlook
you are
on.
slurping hard on your mic.
Yeah, you're talking at that point.
Yeah, it's hard to like reconcile that worldview. I feel, because I mean, I hate. Okay, I'm gonna bring up this one, right? Like, but in his mind, I want to be very clear. But in his mind, Hitler just wanted to help Germany.
Yeah.
Like, it's to suggest otherwise. To suggest otherwise would be kind of ahistoric, even, I would say. Now, he went about it and the reason he is evil, incidentally, is because of the way he went about it. Because the goal of helping Germany, I think we can all agree that Germany after World War I was in a pretty bad state, or after the fall of the Weimar Republic and the inflation and everything. Yeah. So it's like a case of, but the way he went about it, though, that's the problem. And the fact that obviously it was built on essentially like lies, but what would he say? It's like, no, what do you mean? I'm trying to save Germany. Who cares if I need to kill a few people, or who cares if I need to tell a few lies? You know, as I was reading there's a book series called the Lacanius trilogy I was reading recently, and there's like another quote in it that's like the two most dangerous like utterances are the lesser of two evils and the greater good. Like, because once you've assented to those, you can justify anything. Like, I'm doing it for the greater good. It's like, yeah, all right. That leads to great places.
Wants two things.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right though, Jan. Like, he again with the Hitler thing, like to deny like that he had to, that in his perspective he was just trying to better Germany is insane.
Yeah.
He went about it, but we can all agree that he went about it the wrong way.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think you rewind a bit, Jan?
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Magneto, on the other hand, wants two things. He wants to protect mutants from humanity's cruelty, and he believes mutants should be the dominant species on the planet. So the question becomes, what do writers focus on now? His drive.
Why do you keep flashing "be gay, do crime"?
I get that's I get that's like a funny. I appreciate that as like he, right? But like, do crime is a bad thing though.
Yes.
You shouldn't be doing crime.
Yeah.
So like,
doing crime involves harming others or disrupting.
Yeah, like
laws.
always. Like my favorite example of this is like just let's go with like because they say, oh no, I mean just mean like haha I shoplift. It's like, even if you shoplift from like a Tesco's, I've like worked summer jobs in retail at like a Tesco's. If something gets stolen, you know what's gonna happen? The employee is gonna get bollocked over it because why are we getting so much theft happening? And then some might even get
like physically
fired
assaulted
because of it.
Oh yeah.
Or they might get fired. Like
I was gonna say, like, what if it's not even? Sorry, my bad.
Well, no, it's. I feel that what's gonna like this sort of statement comes out of, and based on what he's already said, is a pretty presumptively, I would say, he has a pretty strong distaste of like the general law and how laws set up and how laws operate. But the unfortunate, uncomfortable reality that a lot of people don't want to entertain is if you go down to like the core of any given law, they often exist for very good reasons.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, yeah, I don't know.
Like, I was gonna say the to go with the story example, like, what's to say, what's to say you're not, like, in one case you're not robbing from like some superstore like Tesco or something like that, or you're robbing from like a small business that's owned by one guy. Like, you're damaging that guy's livelihood.
Well, that's what I was saying. It's like, where does it end? Because like it begins, I can
Yeah.
shoplift from this because it's a superstore, right? And it's I can shoplift from this because it's like it's not a superstore. It's like a private store, but it's owned by like a wealthy chain, right? It's or it's like a franchise or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's like a small town, like a spa, but it's like a franchise, right? And it's like it's fine. I can rob from like the mom and pop shop because I just really want a Snickers bar. It's like that's
He just wanted a
like
Snickers bar.
it's like a case of you can. I'm not suggesting that this will always happen, but I am suggesting that the way this mode of thinking, like how rationalizing these things can lead to pretty horrible places, and I think what he's producing here is a path for people to rationalize their bad behaviors.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Eric, please eat a Snickers bar. Why, Charles? Because you're not you when you're hungry. Better?
Great.
Better. Hang on, let's go back a bit. Let's go back a bit. I talked over that.
Yeah, that's
That was funny.
How does one make a revolutionary evil? By giving him traits outside of his goals of societal upheaval. The perfect example of this is Griffith from Berserk.
No.
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 No, you don't. That's the one rule in anime you don't do. You don't defend Griffith.
Griffith is pure evil.
I haven't even
Griffith is
seen
very
Berserk, and I know that.
To be super charitable, I don't think he is about to defend Griffith on the premise that like what Griffith did is justifiable. But like, okay, Griffith is how you make them unambiguously evil. But it's like, okay, sure, but Griffith isn't so much a revolutionary. Griffith just wants Griffith wants a kingdom because he craves power and control.
Oh my
Griffith
God.
is a
Again,
sociopath.
I feel that he's a sociopath. I think it's a misread on Griffith's character to suggest, because a lot of people say like that's the number one like Griffith defender argument is like, oh, he just wants to create Falconia, like this perfect kingdom where he can rule. It's like no, he just wants a kingdom, full stop. He happens to make it good because like he I guess he has some kind of need for people to feel like put him up on a pedestal. But like no, he just wants to rule. That's his motivation from like day one, and his big aspect for him is control. Why do you think that like Guts leaving him broke him? Because he couldn't control him anymore.
Yeah.
That's like, yeah. Let's hear the explanation, I guess.
Between the warring kingdoms and multitude of demonic apostles, the world is due for a new order. And Griffith, seemingly, seems the ideal candidate to bring about this revolution, using his military strategies to gain favor with the Kingdom of Midland, slowly ascending the ranks despite his lack of nobility. Griffith should be the hero, which is why both Gates and Casca, as well as the rest of the Band of the Hawk, revere him so much. So why is Griffith so fundamentally different from characters like, say, Poison Ivy or Magneto?
Because you raped Casca.
Why is it when people say Griffith did nothing wrong,
he also did rape
I just want to be clear, as someone who is pretty keyed into the Berserk fandom, no, absolutely, there's a lot of people who will unironically say Griffith did nothing wrong.
Yeah, they're called
God.
morons.
Yeah.
They're called brain dead.
The simple fact is that Griffith's evil has very little to do with his goals of evolution. The latter parts of the manga indicate he might even be a good leader. Kind of. The problem isn't that Griffith is trying to upheave society. The problem is that Griffith is a sociopath who treats every single person in his life as a tool for his ascension.
Okay.
Human relationships mean nothing to him.
How does this not apply to Poison Ivy and how she has been
I was gonna say,
stories?
So we've ding, that's just the right thing. So we've agreed. The problem isn't. So okay, he's arrived to what we were talking about earlier. It's a case of Griffith, of course, has potentially, you could say, a noble aim of creating a kingdom that's safe, if that is indeed his goal. I don't think it is, but let's suppose that it is. How is that a bad thing? Well, his methods are bad. There you go. You figured it out.
Yes.
So how does that not apply to Poison Ivy? I suppose like what he's he's specifically going for, like, oh, he's a sociopath who views other people as like disposable tools for his end. But it's like,
but that's what Ivy does too.
Yeah, that's the methodology. Like Ivy views, well, no, Ivy's worse than that. Ivy doesn't even view them as tools. She views every living person as an obstacle, pretty much.
Just meatbag. Yeah. But he's encountered with, but Harley.
Yeah, but like that's the thing. So like in those stories, there's one person, but even if it's I don't care if it's the 99% about the 9.9 percentile, right? I care about the fact that she's trying to kill a lot of people.
Yeah.
To get there.
Also,
a lot of people who are completely innocent, like included in her scheme, incidentally, are like people who, like, let's say, recycle every day and they go out of their way to be climate conscious. They're still plant food.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Also, another point that needs to be made is that Harley showed up in the show first. Like, she wasn't a comic character. So the majority of Poison Ivy was like, Ant's premise here is that, oh, people misunderstood Poison Ivy's character in the past. No, Poison Ivy was reinvented to be more sympathetic.
She was changed.
Yes.
Yeah. Which could have a lot to do as well with the fact that the general outlook of writers writing these characters might have changed. Like the writers in current year are going to have different views than writers in like the 1900s, right?
Yeah.
Or then like the 1980s
there's a good example of this. Are you familiar with the book called Heart of Darkness?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Heart of Darkness is a book from like the late 19th century, as in like just returning it for people who might not be aware, like from like the late 19th century, that is heavily about anti-colonialism. It's at the contemporary time of its release, it was an incredibly anti-colonialist like novel, right? It remains that to this day. However, people today have taken particular quibbles with like some of the language and some of the characterization in it of like specific people in Africa. But it's like a case of, yeah, but that was still an incredibly progressive piece at its time.
It
like
was fair for its
social
day.
attitudes. Social attitudes change with history. It's like even today, Heart of Darkness is still an anti-colonialist novel, even if some people might be injured by, like, their sensibilities might be hurt by some of the stuff in it.
Yeah, we call
mine
them
aren't,
pussies.
Yeah, well, yeah, I would say so for Heart of Darkness. I don't think Heart of Darkness is that bad, but like that's like a good example again of how just messaging can be influenced by the time, and interpretations of characters can be changed by the time. Which is why, for example, Apocalypse Now, which is a derivative from Heart of Darkness, takes place in the Vietnam War.
Yeah, because it was meant to be more contemporary.
Yeah, they wanted to criticize the Vietnam War, so yeah.
He manipulates others' emotions on a psychological, emotional, and sexual level.
So does Poison Ivy. So does Poison
Ivy. Literally does.
So does Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy literally has pheromone powers that lets her do that.
Her power is in a way literal date rape.
Yes.
Yeah.
Date rapist.
So like, yeah, this is weird.
Her powers are literal date rape.
To act on his own,
I mean, you're not wrong.
First, to angrily make love with a princess, which sets up his downfall. But also,
can we pause, by the way? I want to clarify. He fucking didn't he essay the princess, or am I misremembering?
No, he didn't. Not really.
He lost
well, I mean, it depends. It's definitely like framed in a way where she doesn't initially want to, but then he kind of like coerces her. Like, you could argue that he did. I'd say there's a difference between that and like actual essay, but like it's definitely not a hey, let's hook up, right? It's like a case of he starts laying hands on her and she puts up some resistance, but then eventually gives in, which is still pretty bad. But
I'd say that's still pretty fucked, but not.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah.
To the Black Eclipse, where Griffith assaults Casca in front of Guts just to prove a point. He has.
Okay, I hate to be that guy, but he's a different being at that point, technically. But that's like splitting hairs.
He's God hand by that point.
He was still evil before then, but like Femto and Griffith are different entities. Now, like there is the whole the thing is, Griffith acknowledged that he was going to be altered and changed when he was, having the conversation with the idea of evil. And that's what like the famous line "I want wings" comes from. But it's a case of he is different as Femto, like he's a different entity.
Should have given him some Red Bull.
He has.
Yeah.
Or just give him a Snickers.
Friend, he must be equal to me in all respects.
Griffith's intentions for dominion don't really matter when his pettiness drives him to commit such acts of cruelty. The evil lurks outside of the revolution. This is why Guts has very little interest in Griffith's goals after the Black Eclipse. He just wants revenge. Because of the personal cruelty, not because of the societal greater plot.
I feel like as though Guts' motivations like move on to, okay, Griffith is going to hurt a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I also
That's how Guts started off in like the Black Swordsman, but arguably over the course of Conviction, he already is beginning to move on from that pretty significantly.
His motivation changes.
Yeah.
Which is why incidentally why the arc is called Conviction, but
True. Yeah.
Have attempted to make Magneto appear to be a villain, employing unnecessary cruelty.
Hey, there he is removing Logan's skeleton.
He is. Yep, there it is. There he is.
Evil.
What did he say?
They know employing unnecessary cruelty beyond his goal. They know they can't make his cause to defend mutant kind appear evil. So instead what they do is they try to add layers of evil beyond that.
Oh my fucking god.
What?
No.
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 What?
It is evil.
He talks about it as if there isn't a foil to him. They're right there. They're the X-Men. They are the example you're supposed to follow.
Yes.
There's so much wrong here. So to start, the idea that his extreme acts of cruelty are beyond his goal. No, they're in line with his goal.
Yeah.
In that, he's ripping it out of Logan. Because
he was just ripping the adamantium out of Wolverine just for funsies.
Yeah, like because Logan is in direct opposite. Isn't that so? My memory's shoddy. Didn't Wolverine like nearly kill him before that happened, or like was that So,
which he was justified to do because like
but like the point is so like obviously Magneto can't do his his work if he's dead, right? Like at least not in a literal sense. So like it is completely in line with his goal to kill Wolverine in that moment, and then
keep in mind he also caused like a worldwide EMP before Logan tried to kill him, which is
and like the idea that what did he say again about the mutant kind?
They know they can't make his cause to defend mutant kind appear evil, so
they can't make his cause to defend mutant kind pure evil. You mean kind of like they couldn't make Griffith's cause to create a kingdom pure evil? It's like, sure, that's fine, but like, so he agrees that like, it's, the motivations are not alone. It's like it's a composite between that and their actions. I just like I don't understand. It seems like the suggestion that I'm getting here is like the idea that the evil things Magneto does is beyond his goal. Of like it's like Magneto, much the same way as the way he talked about Griffith. The reason Griffith acts the way he does is because he believes that is the best way for him to get his goal. Right? Again, Magneto does these things because he believes that is the best way to get his goal. And then whether or not it actually is, that would be a writing appraisal on that point, right? But like, there's just a massive insinuation here that it's like a case of, well, the way you make it happen is if the goal is sympathetic, you gotta make them cruel to like, okay.
Instead, what they do is they try to add layers of evil beyond that. Often, it's an example of Magneto taking a cause too far.
I can't believe you're actually willing to sacrifice lives!
If the loss of a few mutants will ensure our rightful place in this world, then yes, I will make that sacrifice.
Magneto wants the UN to recognize Genosha as a sovereign state, so he threatens a massive, gigantic disaster. Magneto encounters a scientist who designed Sentinels, so he kills her. Things like that, they're extreme, but the ultimate goal isn't selfish pettiness. But ripping the
I'd like to ask what the context of those scenes are, first of all.
Also, isn't selfish pettiness? I really don't like the idea that, like, this is kind of it's getting back to the idea of, like, oh, when it's a cause that's agreeable to me, it's, you know, it's selfless.
justified.
It's like selfless, virtuous pursuit of a greater good. When it's something that isn't agreeable to me, it's selfish pettiness. It's like, no, 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 no. Very few people truly operate in their mind on the basis of selfish pettiness. Like, if the only villain that comes to mind is like Reverse Flash, right? Like,
Yeah.
he is
Or Joker, I guess.
purely, yeah, like he's on purely like selfish pettiness, right?
Yeah.
But like even Griffith operating on like a level of selfish pettiness, it's like, well, you could still argue there is a selflessness to it because he thinks that the way he rules the kingdom would be the best. I guess you could say again, which is like I don't even think that Griffith was a valid example to begin with, because again, he's not a revolutionary in so much as he is just a person who wants power. But like, and a revolution happens to be the means by which he gets, like, if Griffith was already a king at the start of Berserk, he would be, you know, doing radically different things because that is his objective, is to have power. So like, yeah, but like this idea that unfortunately you're selfish and petty if you're not doing something that I find agreeable is, well, I don't know. That feels a bit small-minded.
It is.
Adamantium from Wolverine's body out of rage is. Because that's simply a way to squash an adversary.
No, again, oh my god.
No, dude. Magneto could have taken down Wolverine any other way. No.
Well, in the comics,
yeah, he could have knocked him out. He could have like thrown him around.
I don't think a lot of comic readers saw Magneto ripping the adamantium out of Wolverine as a real moral event horizon. I mean, the X-Men face people like Bolivar Trask and the others, people who made the Sentinels. And these are machines that would, in some alternate futures, create a hellscape of genocide, where mutants are rounded up like animals.
And anyone who stands in our way will suffer the same fate as these men you see before you.
Nathaniel Essex, Mr. Sinister, started as a monstrous scientist who experimented on mutant genetics before strangely being rehabilitated into this quirky, flamboyant guy.
Oh, please don't. Please don't. Please don't bring that shit up. Oh.
You know, that's a little weird to me. I don't get that. By comparison, Magneto ripping out Wolverine's metal skeleton, thus giving us Logan's Bone Claw era, is pretty tame. And that's one of the worst things Magneto did in the 616 continuity.
How on earth is that? Okay.
I don't know that that's true.
I would say that's very much not tame, both in and out of universe. That is a big moral event horizon, I'd argue.
I don't even know that I agree that it's the worst thing he's done. The worst thing about him is the fact that he's willing to just exterminate people because he wants mutants to reign supreme. Like, he was talking. He made a lot of ado. He made a lot of ado about, you know, Mr. Sinister being a genocidal maniac. Magneto is like also a genocidal maniac.
Yeah,
I agree, but like Backseater said, he didn't have to do that to Wolverine. He could just like knocked him out.
Yeah, he could have done it any other way. Yeah.
Any sort of thing, ripping like the metal, essentially ripping his skeleton out of his body was excessive.
Yes.
Like it's very hard to argue against that, I feel.
Yeah, again, it's like it's like I said, Ant's issue here is that he just consciously can't accept that Magneto, or he just overlooks that a core character trait of Magneto is hating humanity. Like, he's going to purposely not look for the most peaceful solution to get his goal.
Yes.
Like, he wanted to come at the expense of humanity.
Magneto is, again, he, in his mind, he pursues a greater good, and he is willing to sacrifice almost anything to get it. But that's
including the people he claims he's supposed to be protecting.
Yeah, like he will often, like, he's perfectly willing to kill mutants if they're standing in his way, right? So like,
Mhm.
yeah.
If that's as bad as it gets, hurting a guy who can heal from any injury, that's not really that terrible.
Okay. So hang on. So because Wolverine
Murder
can,
isn't that bad, guys.
Wolverine is okay. No, murder's okay if the victim is gonna get back up in a few minutes. Yeah, okay, that seems legit.
But how about the horrific, awful pain that Wolverine suffered during that? Is that not worth
Wolverine
anything?
barely survived that in the actual
Yeah.
story, by the way. Like
Okay.
he lost. Not only that, he lost his healing factor for a while.
Okay, so let's get back to like Jan earlier said. Okay, like the Hitler was right example.
Yeah.
Like pointing this back to Ant, because the Nazi scientists thought that what they were doing was right. Does that mean that they were right to experiment on Jews as long as they knew that they weren't going to kill them?
Mengele.
I mean,
Yeah, like,
the same logic applies.
It's a case of hurting a guy that can heal from any injury. It's like, but the inflicting of the pain is the problem, though. Like, you
Yes.
shouldn't be going out of your way to hurt people.
Push to make Magneto irredeemable. And I'd like to say I think it failed. For a few key reasons. Ultimate Magneto is honestly nothing like any other mainstream depiction.
Oh, of course he brings up Ultimate Magneto.
Ultimatum is the worst arc of any
It is.
comic
Crap. It sucks.
universe.
For another, Magneto's base of operation becomes the Savage Lands, not Genosha, or Asteroid M, or whatever.
As a great man once said, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. We are under attack.
Jay, you're not familiar with Ultimatum, right?
Not much, no.
It's
Good.
it's essentially just like massacring multiple Marvel characters in
Everyone
excessively
died at
graphic
the
ways.
end.
Yeah.
Hang on, Jan,
Wait,
go back a bit. Go
wait,
back a bit. We're
reload.
skipping shit.
Yeah.
Brotherhood.
Jan, go back. We were talking over the video.
Yeah. So sorry, I couldn't hear you. Let's see.
Together, which Magneto basically turns into mutant Taliban. It's very clear that Magneto is inspired by the terrorists in American history in the Ultimate Universe. Magneto and the Brotherhood undergo terrorist bombings, political assassinations.
They don't undergo, they undertake them, but that's a nitpick. But
They undergo political bombing.
The White House. Things that offend American sensibilities. Also, Xavier defeats Magneto not by engaging in a real debate of morals, but by just brainwashing him with psychic powers. Great. Love that. But Magneto gets better and then decides to flood the Earth. The Ultimatum storyline is essentially one where we see Magneto isn't just a terrorist, but a very bland, very flat, very angry villain. He kills millions of people in one event by reversing the planet's polarity. He personally snaps Xavier's neck with his bare hands, kills half the X-Men, as well as half the named characters in the Ultimate Universe, and ultimately spurs on hatred towards mutants. Cyclops gets assassinated after this event.
Yeah, that's another thing that I find that he's saying that, like, oh, he ultimately spurns on hatred against humans, so that's like something that Magneto would like do no matter what, right?
That's
Like
something
whenever
he's done
people
in
generally
616
don't
too.
like it. Like, people don't generally like it when you kill people or go out of your way to like uproot their own life. So like anything that, like, you know, makes you do that in a way that's even directly or indirectly harmful to them is gonna undermine your cause quite substantially. It's not very persuasive.
Yeah, and let's be clear. Like, the problem with Ultimatum isn't the fact that Magneto necessarily tries to do it. It's the fact that the writers allowed it to be successful. Like, it's totally in character. I would say it's in character of what Magneto would do, because he's short-sighted in his utopianism. Like,
yes,
that's always been like a core part of the character. Again, the problem with Ultimatum is that the writers just wanted to make it as edgy as possible, so they made him win and just brought unsatisfying conclusions to a whole bunch of characters in this universe.
Too bleak, stopped caring, pretty much.
We also learn in Ultimatum that mutants in the Ultimate Universe are not naturally occurring. They are byproducts.
Oh,
of
I
the
hate
Super
this
Soldier
twist.
Yeah.
Which is deeply awful for a number of reasons. It really undermines the idea that mutants are a minority. They're a byproduct at best. And people identify the mutants with minority groups. They see them as an allegory for people of color.
Oh,
yeah, of course they do.
See what exactly what I said at the start.
Not being a mutant?
And to say outright
Yes.
that they're just unintended byproducts of experimentation and not naturally occurring
it's just like a case of I feel like it needs to be pointed out the fact that they see them as like they identify with them because they see themselves in them. That's like true.
I
for
feel
so many things.
seen.
In the case of Iceman, that does apply because he can turn on his mutant power. He can turn it on and off.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are
Bobby.
instances when you simply can't. You
Just
don't have to be a
don't
mutant in
shoot
public.
ice, Bobby. You'll be fine. Don't freeze
Based on
anything. You'll be
the
fine.
interpretation of Iceman that we're talking about, his parents can also be quite loving. It's just a case of they're concerned
Yeah.
about their kid's safety.
Yeah.
Well,
Going around fighting fucking Magneto.
When he's written by a writer who understands, they are. I'll say that.
Yeah.
People, it creates this deeply uncomfortable message. And this information is revealed
Why?
to Magneto in order to humble
It suggests that like not people who aren't white were
for a number of
grown in a
reasons,
lab
I
or
think.
something, I guess.
Magneto's actions seem driven also more by
Jake, can you
erratic
go back a bit?
fear
We're
than
talking over
justified
it.
resistance.
Yeah.
And that feels really wrong for a number of reasons ethically. Magneto's actions seem driven also more by erratic fear than justified resistance. Magneto makes his helmet.
That's just Magneto in general.
Magneto's actions are always driven by I don't like the word of the use of the word erratic of like versus justified resistance. It's like these are not mutually exclusive. You can be fearful of something happening while also not being justified in the way you go about resisting.
Yep.
Like it's fine to push back on the idea that we should kill all mutants, but to push back on the idea that there should be some sort of limitation on how mutants are able to use their abilities at all, that's a lot more tenuous. And then you move on to like just the idea that mutants should, for example, be registered. Like the government should be aware of who's a mutant and who isn't. That I feel
Yeah.
that should be almost a guarantee, right? Like surely.
Yeah, or just laws, ensuring that mutants don't use their powers against humans, that they're just just layers or just barriers to them not abusing their powers in general.
Like that example from X-Men '97, right? Like, of course there should be special like natal and neonatal facilities specifically for humans. Sorry, for mutants. Of course there should. Like, not every hospital is going to be able to support Cyclops being born.
Well, to be fair, Cyclops was born pretty much with control of his powers. He just lost it when he bumped his head.
But like, but he was still he's a baby. Like he doesn't understand how to that's like the thing.
Well, then again, mutant powers don't manifest until puberty hits. So, but yeah.
Well, that's I'm assuming in that universe, we take it as a fact from the Doctor that they might not be able to control their powers at birth, right? That's an X-Men '97 thing.
And it's not always a guaranteed thing. Like there are some babies that
I know. I know there are some babies who are born with their powers. Like Nightcrawler was born with his powers, but like as a general rule of thumb, most mutants aren't born with their powers activated yet.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Out of fear, Professor X will retaliate against him. Those fears are justified. He denies ever being romantically involved with a normal human, based purely on how he'd be perceived. He changes his name to cut off any remnant of his human life. Ultimate Magneto feels created to humble those who support Magneto. And I don't know, it just feels deeply messed up to me. In order to justify Magneto being a villain, they go far out of their way. And it feels cheap. It doesn't feel like Magneto. They change the core of the character on every level. I feel comic audiences generally dismiss this iteration of Magneto, while those who know nothing about comics use Ultimate Magneto's actions in a way to argue against anyone who claims Magneto has a point. Because to them, Magneto isn't a character, he's just a guy with magnetic powers and a helmet.
Argue against the fact that Magneto has a point. I don't think anyone sane argues against the idea that Magneto has a point, that mutants shouldn't be completely and utterly persecuted and excised from society writ large or killed. Everyone agrees with Magneto's point on some level. The issue is the point is so broad that the way that you can manifest support for that point is extremely broad as well. So, like, I just don't see how that's in any way pertinent. Like, yeah, people find Magneto's point agreeable, but they find his conduct disagreeable. There you go. It's very simple.
All right, sorry, my bad.
They see him
My froze for
as a superficial villain.
The years have been kind to you, Charles. A pity they haven't brought you wisdom.
But there's something more sinister at play with Ultimate Magneto that I haven't really touched on. Magneto in the comics, at this point, this is the early 2000s, bounced between being a comic book bad guy and a more romanticized tragic figure, depending on the writer. This attempt to conflate him with terrorists who had, at this point, recently finished their attack on the United States conflates revolution with terrorists. There is the phrase, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Yep.
And that exists for a reason. Perspective affects whether or not you see a revolutionary as a hero or a villain trying to upend the status quo.
No.
But by turning Magneto into a caricature of a terrorist, it indicated to audiences...
He is, by all definitions of the word, a terrorist in universe.
Okay, yeah. Well, does he not understand what the definition of a terrorist is?
No, he does
not.
Of course,
I just want to say, like, it's like a case of all freedom fighters are terrorists from someone's perspective, yes, but like that's the so then you would agree that it's fine to depict Magneto, quote unquote, as a terrorist because you already admitted that he's a freedom fighter. Like every freedom fighter is a terrorist from someone's perspective, because a terrorist is just someone, like as Jack was going to hint on, someone who uses violence for political aims. Necessarily, every freedom fighter falls into that category. They're using violence to oppose a system of, like, political oppression in their perspective.
Yeah.
Like, it's like impossible to be a freedom fighter without also being a terrorist.
It's worse post-ultimatum.
Unless you're, it's not strictly speaking true if you're in. I guess you could just be in war if you're in if you're a state of war, and you're then a freedom fighter. Like if you make a formal war declaration, I guess. But that's like getting into like messy legalese, really.
Yeah.
That human beings are bigoted. That human beings' bigotries become worse.
What was he saying?
Hatred gets worse post-audiences. That there's a bad way to be revolutionist.
Yeah.
When mutant hatred gets worse post-ultimatum, it's shown to be Magneto's fault that human beings are bigoted, that human beings' bigotries become worse.
I'm actually about to defend the Ultimate Universe. Fucking hell, here we go.
Okay, no. The humans have a strong reaction towards mutants because they understand how fucking overpowered they are and how much they can influence the world.
Also, again, like I can't believe I have to defend the Ultimate Universe, but here we are. Even in the story, it's acknowledged. Like, I'm pretty sure they do acknowledge that, like, even without him, things with mutants and humans still aren't 100% like hunky dory. Like, for instance, there's an arc where he's presumed dead, and during that incident, like several things go off that cause like tension between humans and mutants. Like Xavier's son like causes a massive incident which kills dozens of humans, and that still causes like a lot of fear of mutants because of like what they can do and so forth. So
Legion.
Even in the context of the Ultimate Universe, he literally is just. Oh my God, Anthony! Please come back when you grow brain cells.
Was he? Let's just. I just want to play him back one more time.
It's shown to be Magneto's fault that human beings are bigoted.
No, it's not shown to be his fault that human beings are bigoted, full stop. It's shown to be his fault that his actions lead to people leaning into their worst instincts out of fear, naturally. Like, you would human beings are bigoted by nature, correct. That's not Magneto's fault. What the story is trying to address, I suppose, or I would argue, is the idea that you can stir up people's bigoted impulses and intuitions by doing things that are inherently just like unpalatable or distasteful to people.
Yes.
So the fact that things got worse, the fact that people were already bigoted, that's not Magneto's fault. The fact that things got worse, yeah, that can surely be Magneto's fault. Much the same, like, you would have to ascribe some sort of blame to the Taliban for people being more afraid of Muslims, right? Like
Yeah.
that's not a crazy connection to make.
Yeah,
it's been addressed before, but Ant's problem here is that he hyperfixates primarily on like writers that choose to make mutants a civil rights allegory, and while completely overlooking the superhuman aspect of it, that hypothetical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also just overlooking in general that like the conflation here seems to be between the idea that humans are, like, again, the lack of acknowledgement that all humans are inherently bigoted, but it's about how humans control those bigotries and the capacity to do so, and their willingness to do so in certain instances. And it's never put on Magneto. I am sure, I can promise you that like Magneto is the reason people fear mutants in general.
It very clearly is not. Like, in fact, one of the first things you're shown in the in Ultimate X-Men is like a random mutant kid
getting
being murdered
stomped
by
on.
predators.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets stomped on. Like the only thing, I think they even kill a dog just to kill him, if I remember correctly.
Like, yeah, it just doesn't inspire. Fear doesn't inspire loyalty so much as it inspires compliance, right? Like that's the kind of the idea.
Human beings' bigotries become worse. It's not just one mutant was bad and did something awful. It's that all mutants are bad, and humanity
No.
isn't held accountable for their anti-mutant bigotry.
No, it's the idea that all mutants have
the capacity
to do harm, to be evil.
Yes.
So we should like set up barriers or just like precautions for them.
Also, humanity isn't held accountable. I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure if someone kills a mutant in the X-Men universe, like they murder a mutant, like a human being with a gun, they are still criminals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you mean they're not held accountable?
It depends. There are mutants that cannot control their powers, and they're a threat to everyone around them. Like there's this one story arc where this kid like is just a living nuke, and he turns everyone around him to dust. And then Logan is the only one that can get near him, so he kills him. Yeah.
No. What I mean is, let's suppose that someone just grabbed an AR-15 and capped like a random mutant child in the middle of the street. They would be arrested.
Purifiers, yeah.
So of course they are held accountable. What do you mean they're not held accountable? You mean that the people who are protesting are not held, like the people with the signs there are not held accountable? Like, yeah, how would you want to hold them accountable other than, as a society, I guess, condemning them? It's as though, I don't know, it just feels very, again, it's so childish. Like, they're not held accountable. What do you mean?
Mankind who's held accountable for Magneto's actions.
What?
Did revolution wrong?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Oh no.
People.
How far are we into this video?
It's 20 minutes.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus H. Christ. Oh boy, real life subtext.
They're opposing a villainous system of power and authority. However,
it's almost 1 a.m. for me.
Life who tend to villainize
we have 17 minutes.
If their interests put
I'll be fine, don't worry.
Against
the
interests of powerful authority.
We are oppressed. We are exploited.
God, no.
We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights.
A good example of this is Cuba. Fidel Castro overthrew Fulgencio Batista. Batista was, for all intents and purposes, a very dangerous man who was beloved by the wealthy in Cuba and the men of business outside of Cuba, most specifically the Italian mafia. It's telling that The Godfather Part 2 is arguably the most mainstream criticism of Batista's policies, with Castro's uprising proving to snuff out the criminal activities of Hyman Roth.
Soldiers are paid to fight.
Yeah, but again, this is what we're getting at. Like, Batista's regime was bad, of course, but the way that
doesn't
Castro
make
went about it,
Castro
man,
good.
that's the problem. Yeah, like.
One person being bad doesn't automatically make the other good.
Yeah, it doesn't make them justify. Well, it's like another good example of this, more closer to like British history, is like the whole situation with Rhodesia, right? It's like a case of Rhodesia was a bad apartheid state with a minority white government. That's of course bad, but that doesn't make Mugabe good, right?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Like,
Yeah, so Ant's point here essentially boils down to uh, any kind of legislation regarding mutants is immoral, and which is a ridiculous point to make. The entire purpose of the state is to legislate who lives and dies via direct things like abortion, the death penalty, what laws are enforced by armed police when soldiers are deployed in war, and even indirect things like healthcare and welfare. Uh, that's just to ensure that that society runs the way it should peacefully.
I'd say it's even worse than that. Like his criticism seems to be, yeah, humanity is upset with the mutants following the fallout of like Ultimate Magneto's actions, but and so the mutants suffer the consequences, but humans suffer no consequences for being bigoted. Where it's like, I mutants, it's kind of hard, or it's difficult to blame people for being at least afraid of mutants. Again, it's like that thing you pointed out, where it's like it's the case of it's hard to contrast this against like yeah, I appreciate people can see themselves in that, right? Like, oh, they're a minority, but they're not a minority who looks different from someone else who has slightly different preferences. They're a minority of people who can have eye lasers.
Yeah,
that
yeah. A lot of mutants abuse their powers just because they can. In most stories, like mutant villains are terrorists simply because they're supremacists that want to do their own genocide. They're not fighting for rights or anything.
And even then, even then, there's still like tons of other mutants who are just like generic jackboot thugs, like Bushwhacker. Bushwhacker's a daredevil. Whirlwind. Yeah, like it's like they're just generic ass fucking villains who just show up to fight heroes. But yeah, anyways, Jan, what were you gonna say?
Or even then, there's ones who are complete monsters, like Omega Red and Sabretooth.
Yeah.
Who will kill children and laugh about it like in the most horrific ways.
Yeah.
Well, and I was just gonna say, like, the idea of like, so obviously the solution should be that mutants, humanity accepts mutants' right to exist, and they are afforded the same protections under the law that normal people are. Conversely, though, the mutants are gonna need to accept. Yeah, there's going to be some limitations. Like you can't just use your telepathy in unethical ways. You can't use like Wolverine. Serious talk. There should be like actual like let's just talk about like mutants in the army, right? Wolverine should not be allowed to be deployed into the same active war zone as a normal soldier, because it's like there's a reason that the Geneva Convention has a clause against super soldiers, because like Wolverine probably shouldn't be allowed to be in the army, like or at least there should be some provisions. This is
I mean, like you could have him, I guess. I mean, I guess you could have him like shielding like normal humans.
Yeah, no, exactly. That he could be part of specific strike forces that are meant to take on mutant targets, and like in the end, like there's all sorts of ways you could figure it out, right? Like, but Wolverine shouldn't just be deployed next to John Smith with an AK, right, or whatever. It's like that's it's not gonna work for anyone, and like the idea here seems to be as simple as any sort of provision that in any way disadvantages mutants or attempts to curb their power is the problem, when a lot of it is very sensible and it would obviously be necessary. Like it's just it's kind of silly and childish, like I said.
American business had good reason to hate Castro. He cost them a lot of money.
Have your same conceptions.
Also, I have no idea what Fidel Castro has to do with any of this. I'm so fucking confused.
He's trying to compare the two, I guarantee you.
Freedom of the press is not yours. If you ask us if a paper could appear here against socialism, I could say honestly, no, it cannot appear. It would not be allowed by the party, the government, nor the people.
Castro's story has become spun into a very simple message. He who fights monsters will become a monster themselves.
Yes.
Oh, wait, pause real quick.
He who fights monsters might become a monster themselves.
Why is it so hard to learn? Like, as a lesson that, like, sometimes you can come in with good intentions, but you can ultimately become corrupt. It's like they just can't be aware of that, or just won't accept that. I swear to God.
Yeah, but Jan, are you familiar with the Marxist economist, like the sole Marxist economist professor, Richard Wolff?
Yeah, I am.
No.
Yeah, there's this one clip where he was getting interviewed by
Lance from the Surfs, and one of his commenters, like or one of his super chatters, asked him like a mean question, like Professor Wolf, would I be able to have a PS5 under communism? And like he answered it seriously, like in most circumstances, theoretically yes, but you would have to really ask for it. You'd have to convince you have to convince your boss and your fellow and your comrades why you would need the PS5, like why it, like how it would help the how it would help everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
Oh no, I need to convince people why I have a Wii.
Have a PS5, please, comrade.
Our PS5.
You can have PS5 if you allow me to play co-op with you on Black Ops 6.
You allow the whole squad.
Oh, God.
You allow the whole squad to play co-op.
Yeah. You have to. There's gonna be assigned like gaming pods where you can play with your homies.
You
You
also
get on
assign
Black Ops
certain
6.
weapons.
Oh, God.
also if
You
you
also find
if you
certain
join
weapons
the
as
non
bots.
if you aren't on the side of the communists, you get sent to the gulag.
Yeah.
Also remember to not say F slur.
Someone does it anyway, just gets kicked the first match.
Yeah.
Then they just like send this.
There's like the execution grounds, right? And you have the like different directives where they take them up against the wall, and it's like stole from the party, disparaged the party leader, said the F slur on Black Ops 6.
You just hear them scream. You just hear them screaming, going, "Ah!"
And then
Oh,
you see the
no.
line, and that one's you see the line, and that one's the longest of all of them.
Yeah, then everyone's just shitting themselves in fear as they just hear like a bunch of gunshots.
Oh,
as well, but unlike Castro, Malcolm X's mainstream perception was altered over time thanks to continual effort to preserve his words, thoughts, and actions in both archival media and modern art.
Our forefathers weren't the pilgrims.
Okay, pause this real quick. So I said this around the beginning, but it's very bizarre, and it really shows how bad the world building is of mutants in in Marvel Comics. How are mutants even capable of forming functioning groups? Because mutants are as we've established, like mutants are the same as humans, except they have superpowers, making them way more diverse than anyone. So why would someone like Magneto or Sabretooth, someone that appears human on the outside, want to hang out with someone like Glob Herman or Beak? Why aren't there groups of telepathic supremacists who treats anyone without psychic powers as subhumans? Or like shapeshifters who think that anyone with a fixed body type is disabled? There's just so many like nuances that is never addressed. Like the fact that they would all like fall under one singular identity is an absurd premise.
Yeah.
The idea that like
I think.
Well, no. It's like obviously, they are very good friends, but like Storm and Beast, just compare those two, right? The idea that any any and all mutant pair would conduct themselves in that manner is fucking ridiculous, right? Because like, Storm is a good person. If she wasn't, well, that could go horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Was landed on us. We didn't come over on the Nita, the Penta, and the whatchamacallit. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us.
Alright, I'm back.
Plus, let's be honest, Malcolm X's opinions have become much more mainstream than
Okay.
Malcolm X also wasn't the leader of a country, so that helped too. Politicians have to be held accountable for their political actions. That's
Yeah, my signal cut out again.
Sorry.
Bro,
I'm so fucking lost. What are we talking about?
Hang on, go back.
I was gonna say, to be fair, I think the manga version of the X-Men did something where it was like anyone who had blue skin was like, as a mutant, was like seen even lower than like regular mutants. So
Well, I'm not familiar with the manga.
I'm a little bit familiar with it, but like just barely.
Alright. 1 second. This is
Like,
wanna
they had a whole manga version in the 2000s, so
kinda wanna see what the fuck the point of this is.
nowhere good.
Yeah.
Also, I have to go in 20 minutes.
Alright.
Okay, that's
Plus,
Yeah, I'm probably gonna go head out too. To
Malcolm
be fair,
X's
because I gotta head to
opinions
bed.
have become much more mainstream than Castro's.
I got an early rise.
Malcolm X also wasn't the leader of a country, so that helped too.
What does that have to do with anything?
Accountable for their political actions. That's beside the point.
It's 1 a.m. where I am now.
Politicians have to be held accountable for their political actions. Okay, sure. It's just I'm still waiting for.
Well, he said Malcolm X isn't the leader of the country, so like I don't know what so like.
So you have to. Well, so he would say the level of
have to do?
accountability. Well, so you'd say that his level of accountability is lower than Castro's, I guess. I don't.
I
I
guess.
Sure.
Also, Backseat, my bad. When you said like, what does that have to do with anything? I thought you were referring to like why I had to head out.
What does
like,
your
no,
sleeping time have to do with anything?
Nah. I don't know. Why is he making this point again?
I don't know.
Well, I think like again, it's like I just have to wait for him to outline it, I guess.
This is gonna be painful.
Jr. and Malcolm X, despite the fact that both were villainized in their day by the dominant.
Whenever Anthony outlines anything, I'm just like, okay, prepare for peak cringe.
But why were they villainized? That's the thing that you're missing, Ant.
Yes.
Like Magneto is not villainized for simply pointing out like intolerance. He's villainized for killing people and just his methods again for the umpteenth time.
Well, no, it's like a case of you could go, yeah, there are going to be probably human characters in the X-Men universe who even like those who demonize even Charles Xavier, right? Like, sure,
yeah.
But like, I just super don't care about the fact that like it's like a case of they were demonized in their day. Well, yeah, no, of course they were. Anyone who has any cause ever has been demonized by someone, and typically it's going to be by the majority because the majority incorporates the most people, meaning the most people with the opposite opinion. Like if I was in a was like just a broadly unpopular opinion, like the idea that like I hate pizza, right, and I'm in Italy, I'm of course gonna be persecuted, or demonized. That's like a silly example, right? Just to get away from it. But like I'm gonna get persecuted by the majority Italian population.
Jan, if you go into an Italian restaurant and like eat Italian food in a way they don't like, they'll kick you out. Like if you cut like the spaghetti with scissors, like they'll throw you out.
Yeah, no, I know.
People cut spaghetti with scissors.
Yeah,
so
people do that as a troll, like as a troll,
to try to get kicked out. Yeah,
no,
but like
that's
this is kind of again the point here, of course, being you're right. They were of course vilified in their day. When now we understand with the benefit of hindsight that what they were preaching was very important.
Yes.
However, that is true for all of history. You can't. This just annoys me a lot as someone who's quite passionate about history. Like, it annoys me a lot when people like to review the events of history from the lens of today. People back in the day didn't have the same information. They didn't have the same culture.
They did not have the same knowledge.
They didn't have the same information. They didn't have the same culture. They didn't have the same like general like just value structures.
Context.
They didn't have the same level of like understanding and influence on some of these topics. Like this akin to saying, oh, well, slavery is bad, therefore all of Roman slave owners were evil, where it's like, but that's what everyone did back in the day, man. And it's as unfortunate as that is to admit as a reality. A lot of these people, like, I think I touched upon it last time we spoke, Jack, but like the idea is like everyone has in their head, oh yeah, if I lived in like the South during the time of the Civil War and lead up to that, right? I would be a person who would be in the Underground Railroad helping to free the slaves. It's like, no, you fucking
wouldn't.
Not.
No, you would not.
Like almost. Yeah, like most people wouldn't. Hey, maybe you would be, but you know what the fact of the matter is? You don't fucking know, baby. So you can probably stop judging people for choices in hindsight. Like it's extremely easy to do that. Hindsight's 20/20. I don't know if you're aware of this.
Yeah.
But like it's like a different matter. It's like let's say someone like H.P. Lovecraft who was like phenomenally racist even for his time, right? That's like obviously okay, yeah, that's like different. But like someone in the time at the time who was just like you know, which is the attitude that most people have of like, yeah, segregation is a thing, we do it, I suppose, you know, it's maybe I think it's, you know, not great, but I'm probably not going to do anything about it, right? That'd be the majority opinion because most people just worry about their own lives.
Like, it'd be a bit different for like, for instance, like if someone, there's a difference between like H.P. Lovecraft versus like C.S. Lewis, for instance.
Yeah, of course.
Did you know what he named the cat?
Yeah, I do. I can't say them.
But nowadays,
for the sake of Backseaters monetization, I'm not gonna say it.
I don't give a shit, bro. Go unfiltered.
I'm not gonna do that. Anyone else wants to, by all means, but no.
As opposed to the rest of his body of work.
The cry of black power is at bottom a reaction to the reluctance of
Oh
white
shit, I've been disconnected.
to make the kind of changes necessary to make justice a reality for the Negro. I think we've got to see that a riot is the language of the unheard.
While Castro's story is one of a revolutionary becoming just as bad as the
this might be a hot take.
Victory, MLK and
yeah.
But you can, in fact, disagree with somebody like MLK if they say something stupid. Like if you, like sometimes, no, a riot is not justified in every single circumstance.
Well,
sometimes it leads to, more damage than
mostly peaceful protests.
Yeah, at least more damage than. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, that's the thing. Like, even with the mostly peaceful person, I was like, yeah, no, the protest is mostly peaceful, but there's gonna be people there who are violent, right? And those violent people, they aren't justified. You can make the argument that you understand why they might be violent, depending on what it is they're being violent about and what the actual options they have. But I think that unfortunately, in the year, you know, in Anno Domini 2024. There are very little causes in the West, at least, that you couldn't just find a way to hash out through legislature that you would need to resort to violence. That's just the way. That's just the way of things. And the idea that, and often, like when people resort to violence in the West, you'll find it's because they've been horrendously misinformed.
Right.
On like just the facts of whatever is underpinning their, you know, their lashing out.
Yeah, it's also just the fact that he's just relying on just it's just an appeal to popularity, from
or authority. Well, it's like a case of.
You should look at every argument on its own individual merits instead of just who is saying it. That I guess is my point.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Story for some time became there's a right way to change
the
system.
No, I agree with that.
Oh, the next section, Professor X is not a hero.
Oh God.
That's gonna be good.
Oh, I don't.
There's no doubt about
I'm not good. I mean, I'm not gonna deny Charles Xavier can be a prick sometimes, but like, bro.
He is a good guy.
MLK was perceived as more passive, while Malcolm X
was
more violent and thus wrong.
Even then, like, I'd argue Xavier himself isn't. I mean, yes, he is, but like, I'd argue the X-Men are more of a foil overall. To be fair.
Ignoring a second that this entire section is off topic.
Yeah.
Like what he just said, MLK was viewed as most passive and Malcolm X is more aggressive and thus like violent and thus wrong. It's like yeah, but what is he viewed to be wrong about? Like, because it's a case of again, this comes in degree. So it's like black people should have equal rights. Okay, agree. In fact, black people should have certain protections under the law that assure they can't be deprived of those rights, come what may. Yeah, no, agree.
Yeah,
in fact, black people should probably have their own communities that only they hang out in and whites are prohibited.
Well, hang
don't know
on
about that one.
Not so sure about that.
Further, in fact, and even further to that, the communities that the black people have made for themselves, they should have guns so that they can shoot the white people if they go there. It's like I don't think creating an ethno-state is the solution. Like this is just another evidence of like fucking like this is just like another evidence of like horseshoe theory. They just want spaces where only certain people can be. It's like I can think of a few other people who wanted that.
Yep.
Like
I don't know. I think basically I think basically why is because it's like people like soy boys like Ant who can't throw a punch to save their damn life are all like, oh, aggression is bad, therefore we shouldn't be aggressive because aggression is like negative emotions and stuff. Or like it's just this odd correlation that SJWs always bring up and like fucking like cause like I get it all the time. Like I'm real angry in all my videos, and you got idiots like Melvin Sherman coming in saying like, "Oh, bro, you should calm the fuck down." It's like, no, bro, I'm not gonna calm the fuck down just cause I fucking offend you. So yeah. Anyway, it's just this weird correlation where it's like aggression equals bad basically to these people. So yeah. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's yeah.
Were perceived as violent at the time.
Yep.
And were strategically
Here
focused
comes
on
pain.
particular segregative practices. I'd like also to point out that the majority of people who violently abused the black men and women partaking in those sit-ins probably went on to cite MLK to silence all opposition to the status quo.
Or they probably
Many
did.
of the people who protested the sit-ins are still alive.
What was it?
Yeah, no, fine. I'm fine with all of this as long as you agree that the reverse is true. That there were people who sometimes, are lashing out at people who support the status quo merely on the premise that they think that they are right.
Mm-hmm.
Like
He probably doesn't.
Nah, he don't.
Anthony probably doesn't though.
Sometimes the status quo is just fine, like in certain
Yes.
cases.
That's another
Like,
thing. As fucking SJWs like Ant always assume that like there's that like if there's a status quo, there's something wrong and like change must happen. I don't know why. It's just fucking people like Ant just believe that there must be we must be in a perpetuous state of change. Like we can never settle down and just have things be like the same for a set amount of time or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And how many of those older conservative individuals probably cite
just
Dr. King?
I think that's just because Ant is so miserable himself.
Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. You think of how he changed America.
Bro just wants to bring the world down with him, probably.
Wait, what does it say?
Union.
What did that quote say? Reverend King, motive represented, wrote then Ohio Senator John Ashbrook. He sought not to work through the law, but around it.
Oh no.
Wait, that's. I mean, in and of
That's
itself.
vigilantism.
Well, no. It's like a case of that can still. That's not a condemnation in
Oh.
of itself, right? Everyone works around the law to get change usually.
Yeah.
Like it's trying to find a way either through legal means or like like novel like almost any novel legal theory is going to be working around the law.
Yeah. What does Ant think legislation even is? Like what bills are?
Yeah. Like it's one of those things where I mean I don't know really the context of this quote. I guess I could read the whole thing, but I also kind of can't be asked because again this is just not relevant to Magneto.
Let's just move on. I don't even understand why we're talking about Mike Pence. Let's just move on to Magneto.
He just wants to get all of his gripes out of the way.
Yeah.
Because we know even after they pass it, they can't enforce
God damn it. For some reason on my end it says I've been disconnecting. Hold on.
Let that stew. How the words of the people they fought are now being stolen from those people. By contrast, Malcolm X later changed course on some of his beliefs after seeing how, outside of the American conservative culture, it is possible for coexistence to occur.
Okay, so first of all, he criticized white liberals too. Let's just be very clear about that. Like he had no, like he was not a Democrat. He was not a Republican. Like he was very much outside of the traditional like political sphere, like political systems at the time. Like
Isn't there a quote of his where he said something along the lines of like
outside of
beware
American,
the white liberal too?
I was gonna say outside of American conservative cultures, it's like, well, I mean, this is again a thing with humans in general. Yeah, conservatives are, of course, can be more resistant to change than liberals, but like most conservatives these days aren't pro-segregation, and so like how did that come about? Well, probably because they found that persuasive on even their conservative principles. Because the entire point of like MLK was to argue the fact that America already was at its inception supposed to, that's my understanding of it anyway, was already at its inception supposed to not be segregationist. It's just something that was implemented after the fact. So that was the point. So there's a conservative argument for it as well. It's just a case of this feels, I don't know, it just feels like a jive against conservatives. I don't know fucking why. But
It is.
I also don't understand this whole section. It's weird.
Probably is, knowing Anthony.
Yeah.
Travels was that all of the Africans, not only Africans, but the Asians and the Muslims, look upon us as their long-lost brothers. And America had actually tricked many of them into a hands-off policy by giving them the impression that she was honestly trying to do something to solve the problem.
So why am I bringing Martin Luther King and Malcolm X?
Yes, I'd love to know. Thank you.
About X-Men. Well, that's because for a while it was very popular to compare Professor X and Magneto to MLK and Martin.
Oh, jeez, and it was wrong.
But
like,
I think it's very clear that Stan Lee did not intend on this, nor did Jack.
Oh, based, yeah, true.
And I don't think it's fair to either real person to compare them to fictional characters whose behavior and actions have shifted drastically over the years, especially comparing MLK to Professor Charles Xavier. I mean, let's be fair. Professor X has a school where he created a paramilitary force that directly battles humanity when they create death traps, killer robots, or angry mobs. That's really different from the real-life civil rights.
No.
They're not a they're not a paramilitary force. Doesn't the Xavier Institute operate with like government backing?
Yes.
Not usually, but every now and then they do assist the government. But by and large, no, they act on their own. But
yeah, but like they're an institute that is like accredited in some shape or fashion, right? Like you can actually go there to school.
Yes, yeah, and that's the thing. It is literally the school. Xavier made his mansion a school, and its primary function is to just teach mutants how to handle their powers and how to fit in better with society. That is its primary function. The X-Men is just a side gig to them, and the only reason the X-Men get highlighted more is because, that it's a superhero comic, and, that shit's just more interesting given the genre, of course. But either way, like, that is the whole fucking point. It's not, they're not just, their whole, like, part of their mission is to go out and stop evil mutants like Magneto, the Sentinels, the Purifiers, and all the rest. Yes, that is part of it, but that's not really the primary portion of it. They really are more about diplomacy more than fighting, if anything. So yeah.
Also, they're not defying humanity.
Yes.
They're defying Robert Kelly or Trask or whoever is trying to kill them.
Also, again, my understanding of X-Men is that Charles Xavier, again, he operates through, like agreement and trying to extend an olive branch to humanity.
Yes.
So we'd have
that is very correct.
So you have no reason to assume that he hasn't gone out of his way. The fact that this institute, that's kind of what I was getting at earlier. The fact that his institute exists means that his activities and, what he's doing there is sanctioned in some way, shape, or fashion, because he would, of course, make sure that it is, because that's his entire point.
Yeah, because there have been a lot, and I really do mean a lot of characters, like, in the fucking X-Men, on the X-Men, like, roster, and as, like, a part of, like, their fucking, as part of, like, their supporting cast, who aren't really mutants at all. It's like, here, let me look up a list of X-Men characters who are not mutants, okay? So, here we go. So, all right, so now, these aren't necessarily good guys, but they are just a part of the X-Men cast of
Juggernaut?
characters. Yeah, so Juggernaut is a human with mystical powers granted by the god Sidorak. Longshot is an interdimensional being specifically from Mojo World. Spiral is a human who is mutated on Mojo World. Mimic is another mutate. Corsair is just a normal human gunslinger and Cyclops' dad. Lilandra is an alien princess and one of Xavier's love interests. Warlock is an alien and a member of a techno-organic race called the Technarch, who's considered a mutant by his race. Hepzibah is an alien from the Shi'ar Empire. Phantomex is a human mutate cyborg. The X Club are normal human scientists. Lockheed is an alien dragon. Lady Deathstrike is a cybernetically enhanced superhuman. Cloak and Dagger are both mutates, although it was ambiguous for a long time if they were mutants. But then Dr. Nemesis showed up and said, no, you do not have the X gene. Dupe is an artificially created being. Bastion's a cyborg. Mr. Sinister is a mutate who is powered up by Apocalypse and then experimented on himself. Sauron is a human who is mutated in the Savage Land dinosaurs. So now he's this mutate vampire pteranodon with a Jekyll Hyde complex. Lorelei is a human mutate who is artificially mutated by Magneto. The Children of the Vault are a species of humans that evolved separately. Captain Britain is a human wielding mystical artifacts and the sister to Psylocke. Omega Sentinel is a human sentinel hybrid, which is notable considering she was originally programmed as a sentinel to kill mutants, which is about as unmutant as you can get. Danger is a robot and the physical manifestation of the Danger Room. Ink is a baseline human with power tattoos. Brew is an alien member of the Brood race, and like Warlock, he's a mutant in the sense that he can feel compassion. Deathlock Prime is an interdimensional cyborg. Kid Gladiator is an alien, also from the Shi'ar race. Warbird is an alien, again, Shi'ar. Day Tripper is a magical witch. Puck is a mystically empowered human. And believe it or not, Deadpool is a mutate, as his healing factor came from Wolverine. And frankly, all of this does make kind of sense when you think about it, because the X-Men would look pretty hypocritical if they didn't allow non-mutants on their team and on their premises. So yeah.
Technically, they've even had Spider-Man as a honorary member of
they had
like,
mini series on
that. It's also a case of like, again, like that's kind of with all of that. Yeah, they definitely. So what I was going to get to as well eventually is the idea that, oh, it's a paramilitary strike team. It's like, no. They are, I mean, in the universe, you can view them that way, but this is also a universe where there are incredibly powerful super beings that are trying to do harm. So, of course, there's an interest, be that in, for people or for governments to have equally powerful people who are able to stop them. That's just, it's not, the intention isn't to be a paramilitary. The intention is we want to run a school, but there are things that threaten us running a fucking school that are beyond, what's in our world.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah. Anyway, I do have to head off because the movie starts in half an hour.
Yeah, I gotta head out too, to be fair.
Do we want to make a part 2 to this and finish it off, or are we done?
Yeah, sure. Like, this was fun. Like, today, I covered a bunch of videos. I won't mind doing it again.
I know, but do you guys want? But do you guys want to continue this video at a later date?
I'm kind of curious to see how Professor X is not a hero. Professor Magneto, fucking hell. Professor X is not a hero.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see that one.
All right.
He believes in coexistence. Therefore, he's a bad.
Sure. All right.
Anyway,
see you guys.
All right, yeah. So with Jan leaving, if you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment below what you thought of the video, subscribe if you want more videos like this, and I will see you guys next time in the backseat. Take care.